And now I'm thinking, Colonel Markinson, that your suggestion of transferring Santiago, while expeditious and certainly painless, might not be, in a manner of speaking, the American way. Santiago stays where he is. We're gonna train the lad.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our season of Rob Reiner. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist down here in San Diego, California, and very excited to be continuing our season of Rob Reiner, Steve, with this film, which many of our listeners have been asking us to tackle, and the time has come.
It's definitely the time in more ways than one, because boy, as I'm watching this movie, I found a whole bunch of stuff that relates to things we're talking about today. But we should say that if you want to support the Cine-Files, and in fact, if you want the Cine-Files to keep being produced, the best way to help us out is by going to patreon.com/the Cine-Files or Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe and get ad-free versions of the show, as well as our Cine-Files shorts. And of course, on Patreon, you can also join our Cine-Files advisory board, where we had a fantastic meeting plotting the future of the Cine-Files just a few days ago.
Yeah, and they were very excited for us to be tackling the film we're tackling today. And that's another way you can make a big change in the direction of the show sometimes is coming onto the advisory board and getting your voice heard. Another way you can help us and support us, of course, is if you're listening to us on the ad-supported version of the show and you hear some products or services that you want to try, then we would encourage you to try them and to use our code, usually Cine-Files or the Cine-Files, because you'll get a huge percentage off the product or the service that you want to try, and indicate to those people that they should keep coming back to support our show month after month with their products and their services and their ads. We would very much appreciate that.
And right now, I mean, when we decided to do the season of Rob Reiner, for obviously very tragic reasons, there was a serious debate. There was no question in my mind that we had to do When Harry Met Sally, but the question of the other films we had to cover, there was a debate, and there was very, very, very strong demand for a little movie called Stand By Me, and strong demand led by the outlaw John Rocha for the film we're doing today, which is A Few Good Men, and I am really excited to be jumping into it.
Yeah, me too, Steve. I'm so glad we're tackling this movie today, and I will be leading it, which I rarely do on the Cine-Files, and so it's a lot on my shoulders, but I love this movie very much, and I'm excited to talk about it with you. But not only am I excited to talk about it with you, but we are welcoming to the show as our guest for this conversation for A Few Good Men from 1992, directed by Rob Reiner, one of our listeners, our friends, our fans, and someone that we genuinely enjoy and who has been a guest on our show numerous times. 1/3 of the Geek Buddies. He's a writer, director, actor, all-around great person, and that is the great Shannon McClung. How are you, Shannon?
Hey, look the three of us, we literally are a few good men right here.
We are. We are. Well, it's funny that you say that, because one of the things I was thinking about quite a bit is, which one of these people am I? And I am very clear on who I relate to the most of this movie. Spoiler alert, not one of the men.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting experiences of watching this film again after not having seen it for a bit is that I found myself connecting with Jessup a little bit more than I had in the past. Because before in the past, I was very much in Kaffee's Corner, but which I love. That's the name of a coffee shop, Kaffee's Corner. But like I was very excited to have this discussion with you guys, because I don't know if it's about age. I don't know if I'll become more hardened in my older years, but it's a fascinating film to watch again while still feeling like Kaffee and them were completely right. It just feels like there's a little bit more to what Jessup is, where he's coming from, than maybe I initially thought when I saw it in my 20s and 30s.
It's funny you say it's funny you say that, because as I was thinking about, boy, I really relate to one of these characters. Well, I didn't say, well, and John is obviously Jessup. The thing that kept coming to my mind is, man, if I were ever going to do this play, John's playing Jessup.
I would 100% love to play Jessup. And speaking of which, though, Shannon McClung, you saw this play at Florida State University. A bunch of our friends were in it. What's your remembrances of this play, or what's your thoughts on this play and your experience with the original play written by Aaron Sorkin, A Few Good Men?
So at the Florida State School of Theater, they actually have a small student-run theater called the Freeworks Theater. So when I got there at the beginning of freshman year, and I got there like a day before classes started, which for any of your listeners who are going to school, don't get there the day before. Get there, give yourself a week. But they were doing A Few Good Men at the Freeworks Theater. So like I was a huge fan of the film. Like it's really one of the first films that I could feel myself kind of growing up a little bit, because I was 13 or 14 when it came out. But getting to watch it on stage, played by much younger people. But it was just such a fascinating realization to see, one, that this entire production was put up by a bunch of people between the ages of 18 and 22. Not just the actors, but the director, the production, like costume, everything was done by the students. And it just really, really inspired me. And it got me really bummed that I didn't get there earlier and I didn't get a chance to audition for it. But amongst the cast was our friend Michael Vogel in the role of it was Noah Wiley's character. He's Corporal, I want to say like Corporal Barnes, I think. But that was the first time I think I saw Michael Vogel, who is on stage in fatigues. They didn't give him service uniforms. They were all in fatigues except for Jessup. But yeah, I mean, it was just so kind of exciting to see it on stage, and then that inspired me to go find the script for the play and seeing the differences between the two. It's just a fantastic film, and it's one that I kind of regularly go back to.
Steve, we know it's based on a play. I'll talk about that, do some pre-production thing in just a second, but this is an unusual approach. I want to go. Do you remember ever seeing the play? Steve, you're a guy who's gone to the plays, seen theater many times through the years in different cities. Did you ever see the play on stage?
It's so funny you asked that, because what I've been thinking about in the last day is like, oh, I don't know this play. Yeah. And it's so fun because this is, early 90s. I literally graduated from theater school in 1991. This is peak theater time for me. I was reading tons of plays, seeing tons of plays. This one I missed. And it's so interesting because this, to me, I mean, in addition to everything else this movie is, this is the introduction, the debut of one of the most important writers, screenwriters of the last 30 years, because this is how we discover Aaron Sorkin, But no, I didn't know the play.
Yeah, I've never seen the play on stage either, but I know that a lot of people speak about this play with a lot of reverence, and it has been performed numerous times over the years in multiple productions all over the world, by the way. It is a play that resonates for a lot of people. Some of the people that have been a part of this play in the past, in the original iteration of the play, you had yourself Tom Holtz. That's right. Amadeus played Daniel Kaffee. You had Stephen Lang as Colonel Jessup. Stephen Lang, who's still, being a villain in films if you watched Avatar. So those are the kind of people that were involved in this from the beginning. Clark Gregg was in the original production of the play as well. So quite a few people throughout this. And of course, through the years, as I've said, it's been done. Michael O'Keefe has been a part of this play. Lou Diamond Phillips. Shannon and I were just talking off mic about Rob Lowe doing a production of this play himself. There's been a Swedish production of this play put on. There's a Hindi production, a Hindi version of this play that has been put on through the years as well, a Canadian version, a British version as well. And in 2016, the NBC announced they had an intent to broadcast a live television production of A Few Good Men, which would star Alec Baldwin as Colonel Jessup, and Sorkin coming back to adapt his original script to make it happen here. However, NBC never announced an air date for it, and it never went off. So unfortunately, we never got to see that version of the play, which I think would have been very interesting.
Alec Baldwin is Jessup. Holy crap. That would be.
I mean, you could do that right now, bro. Right now, bro. But yeah, this play was produced and directed by the film itself was produced and directed by Rob Reiner, written by Aaron Sorkin, adapting his 1989 play, something really funny about this one, Stephen Shannon, is that Sorkin was inspired to write the play from a phone conversation with his sister, Deborah, who was a graduate of Boston University Law School. She had signed up for a 3-year stint with the U.S. Navy JAG Corps, the Judge Advocate General's Corps, and she told Aaron about a case she was working on involving a hazing gone wrong at the U.S. military base in Guantanamo Bay, where the accused said they were ordered to do it by a superior involving a code red. Sorkin at the time was working as a bartender at Broadway's Palace Theater. So if you were one of the patrons who was going to see La Cage aux Folles, apparently Sorkin was writing the play while he was working as a bartender during La Cage aux Folles performances. On cocktail napkins, he would write the play on cocktail napkins. He would go home every night, type up what he had written on a Mac 512K. I don't even remember a 512K. Steve
That's
probably
my first
does.
computer. That is my first computer. It's a Mac 512K. I got it my freshman year at Cal in 1986.
There you go. He shared this computer with his roommate. So they put that on your table and then continued to finish off the play. The play ended up premiering on November 15th, 1989 and ran for 497 performances. And one of the names I didn't mention was Ron Perlman, who played Colonel Jessup as well in one of the productions. And wow, wouldn't you love to have seen him do that? But we're going to talk about the movie here. So, Steve, I'll go to you first as my co-host on the show. What was your first experience with seeing A Few Good Men in 1992, if you saw it in 1992?
Of course I saw it. I saw it in the theater, and this is the point. I mean, we've talked about my love for Rob Reiner already and how every single one of his movies solidified even more how much I loved him. So, of course, I think I saw it opening night. I absolutely loved it. I've watched it many times since. What's really funny, I hadn't watched it in probably 15 years until about 3 months ago that I decided to watch it before the passing of Rob Reiner. And so it was fresh in my mind, and it was so interesting revisiting this movie at this era. But yeah, absolutely saw it in the theater, loved it the first time, and still love it.
Shannon, you already teased about your experiences with the movie. Can you give us a little bit more? Do you remember when you saw it, who you were with, and what the effect the movie had on you?
Yeah, so I was 13 or 14 at the time, and both of my sisters started taking me to R-rated films, and because you got to be 17 to get into an R-rated film, or at least that was the case before. Maybe it's easier to sneak in now, but my sisters and their respective boyfriends started taking me to see more dramatic films. I remember I went to go see Cape Fear with my sister Sherry and her boyfriend at the time, and really scared the hell out of me. But it was also with my sister Sherry that she took me to see this film. And I remember watching the trailer, and it was cut so dramatically. Like I kept waiting for the film to take a right turn into kind of not secret agent territory, but kind of like I was waiting for the action to start. And this was the first time that I started to appreciate the power of language, that really well-written dialogue can be just as exciting as a lightsaber duel, as a shootout, as a car chase. And this is really one of the first times, because I had done school plays, but this is one of the first times watching those performers on screen thinking, I wonder if I could actually do this. And, about 30 years later, I get to act with one of those folks that's up on the screen. So A Few Good Men will always hold kind of, a special place in my heart. And again, it's just a fantastic film.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this film in 92, probably opening weekend, Stephen, maybe that opening week, maybe I wasn't too much into opening weekends at the time, but I remember seeing it that week. And of course, I was 2 years into the military by the time this film came out. So I was, hardcore in that mental mindset of a military film. But I remember watching this movie, and it put the fear in me that I had before I joined the service, because I was pretty influenced by Full Metal Jacket, to be afraid that the kind of chubby kid would get beat up by the people there in his platoon. That did not happen to me, thank God, and I ended up making a lot of friends there. But seeing this film kind of woke that fear up, and watching how a young Latino kid is treated in the Marines by people who are in power, it really did check a lot of the boxes about the little guy versus the big corporation, which is essentially what the Marine Corps symbolizes in this film. And I just remember this being such an incredible incredibly well-written film. I remember the dialogue being something that even as a young kid who wanted to become an actor, in the back of his mind in 92, that I would love to have done this as a play on stage. It just was so incredible. And this is Tom Cruise right in that take me seriously as an actor phase. Demi Moore, which we'll talk about, was coming off some misses, so she really was kind of stepping up. G.I. Jane was just a few years away from happening as well. And I didn't know who Kevin Pollak was, so I was kind of introduced to him in this film. But it's really Nicholson, right? I mean, this is Nicholson right at that. Is Nicholson kind of phoning it in? Is he still a potent player in the game? So this is an interesting time with all these people together. And then Rob Reiner as a director coming off of the fantasy and the interesting films and he had just done Misery, I think 2 years before. So this is Rob Reiner kind of walking into this next level of his career as well with something this daunting. So I just remember loving it. And I'm in the 4K version I recently got, I highly, highly recommend. It's such a great, clean version of the film for people to enjoy. So this is the kind of amazing effect that the play had. It was so good that in 1988, before the play even debuted, Aaron Sorkin sold the play's film rights to producer David Brown. Brown was producing at TriStar Pictures. He tried to interest TriStar in adapting A Few Good Men, but his proposal was declined because at the time he couldn't get star actors to be attached to the film because the play hadn't come out yet. But in 1990, Brown received a call from Alan Horn at Castle Rock Entertainment, who was eager to make the film. Rob Reiner, a producing partner at Castle Rock, as we all know by now, opted to direct the film. And then Reiner and Sorkin spent 8 months writing the screenplay, adapting the play to a screenplay. And William Goldman even did an uncredited rewrite. And Sorkin liked a lot of Goldman's changes so much that he incorporated them into later versions of the play that were done as a production. And the play being done on stage was super important as well because Tom Cruise saw the play on Broadway, and it's what inspired him to want to be cast as Lieutenant Kaffee in the film.
I just want to go back to David Brown not being able to get this produced because just to be real clear, David Brown is Zanuck Brown, who in the 70s had the most ridiculous The Sting, Jaws, I mean, a whole like movie after movie after movie, the most successful producing partners of the 70s. And now it's a decade later and he can't get a star attached to his movie. I mean, that just tells you a lot about Hollywood. And I really think about that 8 months of Reiner and Sorkin working together because, I mean, my assumption is that this has got to be one of the most important schools for Sorkin learning the trade of what movies are, is sitting with Rob Reiner doing this process, you know?
Well, and Sorkin definitely, go ahead, Shane.
I was going to say, according to Rob Reiner in an interview, the people at Castle Rock received this script as a writing sample. And it wasn't to like try to get it made. It was just kind of like, hey, look at this exciting new writer we have. And they read the play and Rob Reiner was like, what's going on with this play? Like, yeah, he's a good writer, but what's going on in this play? And that is what sort of preempted that call to David Brown. That's how the ball got rolling on this.
And I have to imagine that this checked all the boxes for Rob Reiner, right? This is the guy who had played Meathead on All in the Family. This is a guy who was very clear with his politics, this idea of a young kid being stepped on by the people in power to silence him from speaking up about some of the stuff that's happening behind the scenes at an institution. I can't imagine that this didn't like get Rob Reiner excited as to direct the film as an artist and as a creative person. And Aaron Sorkin, you mentioned, Steve, working with Rob Reiner in this 8 months of adapting the screenplay. Aaron Sorkin said he enjoyed working for Rob Reiner, but he said the director ordered him to make countless rigorous revisions of his screenplay. And I think of being stuck in a hotel room with Steve Morris for 8 months as I'm trying to adapt one of my plays into a film and just can only imagine the rigorous and countless revisions of my screenplay that Steve Morris would make me do.
Well, that might be true, but you're ignoring the incredible food that we would get through the whole time. We would eat really well. It would be good cocktails. We would have a lot of fun. But yes, we would have to get the script right.
And also, Johnny, because Steve does kind of look like Rob Reiner, you are really having a very, very unique experience. And another thing, when you were talking about the script speaking to Rob Reiner, if you look at the parallels, I mean, and granted, where he was at this point, this is like his fifth big movie in a row, fourth or fifth. You look at the parallels of the character of Daniel Kaffee to the person of Rob Reiner. That the entire script, he's trying to escape this legendary shadow of Lionel Kaffee, his dad, and how close that was to Rob Reiner's early career, coming out after having been in All in the Family and trying to get established as more than just Carl Reiner's son. You look at the parallels, and it's just kind of it's kind of poetic.
Absolutely, and I mean, Tom Cruise this is how he made his bones as well during the first 20 years of his career, was playing these male characters that had these father issues hanging over him all the time. So I imagine this appealed to him as well, because it's been noted in quite a few interviews that there was similarities to that in his own life, experiences to that in his own life. And I think it culminates with Magnolia, that scene with him and Jason Robards in Magnolia. There is so much of Tom Cruise, I think, the person in that performance when he's by his bedside, that he has been working through for a couple of decades before we get to that movie, for sure.
I mean, to be real clear, and I've never done a study of this, but if you were going to find which issues are highlighted the most in all of cinema, daddy issues would be real high on that list. Whether just putting aside the entire MCU and all of the DC universe,
and Star Wars, and Star Wars,
and Harry Potter, there's a lot of daddy issues.
There are a lot of daddy issues for sure. Well, the filming began on October 21st in 1991 at the Arlington Memorial Bridge in Washington. The U.S. Marine Corps did not give them permission to shoot on bases. They were denied the permission by the production. But the film's Guantanamo Bay scenes were filmed in Southern California at Crystal Cove Park, Fort MacArthur, and the Naval Air Station Point Mugu. And there were 200 off-duty Marines that were allowed to serve as extras for the film, which we're about to watch when we get into the movie, by the U.S. Department of Defense. And all the courtroom scenes you see at the latter half of the movie were filmed at Culver Studios in Culver City, California. And the title to the movie, A Few Good Men, was a Marines recruitment slogan. I think all three of us are old enough to remember we're looking for a few good men. That was the campaign before the one we have now, The Few, the Proud, the Marines.
We're looking for a few good men with a medal to be Marines.
Okay, gentlemen, are we ready to dive into the world of A Few Good Men?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's get crystal clear about this.
It's dawn. We see a watchtower in the distance. We see a soldier look through his binoculars, and we see that this is a base, military base of some kind. And then the graphic appears telling us that this is the United States Naval Base, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. This is so fascinating because this base never stayed in my mind when I watched the movie. I never kind of remembered that it was Guantanamo Bay until all the stuff that happened in Guantanamo Bay happened a few years ago, that now I kind of connect this movie. And the movie takes even more resonance considering what happens to Santiago in the movie, having heard about what happened at Guantanamo Bay a few years ago. So it's an interesting thing to think about now.
I mean, what's interesting is that the whole idea of what Guantanamo is entirely different today than it was when this movie came out. When this movie came out, it was a forward base operation in Cuba, which is a communist country. And that's what it was about. Today, Guantanamo Bay is a prison.
Yes.
For terrorists, and there's all sorts of issues about Guantanamo. I don't know how much you have read or listened to all of the cases of all of the people and what are the legal procedures for people still decades later being held in Guantanamo, all of which has nothing to do with this film.
Right. But you can see that it's, you can just sense the ominousness of this whole opening here, because we hear the tones of the Mark Shaman score. Shannon, I know you're a score whore. Mark Shaman, where is Mark Shaman in your ranking of score of composers here with this score.
I mean, he's definitely up there. I mean, when you look at what he goes on to do later, like, he was a big part of, the Hairspray musical. This is this is not Hairspray. I mean, this is a smaller score, and this is not the type of movie that needs a big score. But as the film starts, you do hear that opening ba 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 ba. Like, it is ominous. That's the perfect way to put that, Johnny. And it's like as the picture slowly comes into frame, you see again that spotlight going back and forth. You see the barbed wire chain link fence. I mean, it is really setting the tone for what we're about to see.
Well, we see two soldiers walking briskly to a building to go inside, down a hallway, and into the room of a sleeping soldier. A young Latino soldier wakes up to see the faces of Wolfgang Bodison and James Marshall, who are playing Lance Corporal Harold Dawson and PFC Loudon Downey.
So this is interesting. Both of these guys are interesting. So Wolfgang Bodison, his origin story, this guy did not come to LA to be an actor. This guy came to LA to be a writer and a director. He wanted to be a filmmaker, and his first gig was as Rob Reiner's personal assistant on the set of Misery. So he's working with him. He sounds like he drove a picture car in Boys in the Hood. It sounds like he was doing all sorts of kind of random work, trying to learn about filmmaking and being a director. And Reiner was casting A Few Good Men and brought in person after person after person, couldn't find who he was looking for, and finally called up his friend Wolfgang and said, "Have you ever thought of acting?" 2 auditions later, he gets the part.
Yeah, he was originally a location scout for the movie, and Rob Reiner brought him on to audition for this.
And our other actor is James Marshall, who, has, first of all, he has a fantastic face. Like, he has one of those faces that you can't stop looking in. He is in Twin Peaks, in those movies, but the movie that I most remember him for, that John is now looking up, because I know it's a movie that which is, he is in Gladiator. But not that Gladiator. He is in the Gladiator from the early 90s, along with Cuba Gooding Jr., who's also in this film, Brian Dennehy. I love this boxing movie from the early 90s. It's totally forgotten to time, but it's also directed by the same guy who directed Roadhouse, which shows why I like this movie. Because I haven't watched it in decades, but it was definitely a guilty pleasure of that era.
Yeah, I remember that film being, because I was not a Twin Peaks person, so I didn't know James Marshall. It was that film that I went to see because of Cuba. I liked Cuba Gooding Jr. And then Brian Dennehy playing a great villain. From that film, I'll always remember you have to duck your head. I don't know if if this is correct science-wise.
The reason you asked that question is because you didn't see me duck my head simultaneously to you at that moment.
Exactly. But also, this had quietly a damn good soundtrack. People, I still have this on CD, the Gladiator soundtrack. There was some good workout music on that soundtrack, and that was when I was knee-deep into working out in the 90s with military stuff. So I was very happy to see James Marshall be a part of this. And I have auditioned against Wolfgang Bodison for commercials in the past when I was living in LA, and it was always a mind fuck to see him just being a regular actor trying to book a job, because he's such a poignant part of this movie, Yeah.
The funny thing about Wolfgang Bodison is a lot of times one of the misconceptions about show business, about the craft of film acting, for people that don't do it, that don't have any exposure to it, it's sort of like, well, the best one gets the role. And he is a clear example of that is not the case, because more than likely, the other actors who came in to audition for Rob Reiner in a big movie that's going to star a trio of Hollywood powerhouses, the agencies are sending their best and brightest. So more than likely, Rob Reiner saw a lot of good young actors for this role, but it's not who's the best, it's who's right. And in this situation, the guy who had no acting experience, but physically embodied this role the best, is the guy that got the part.
That's a great point, Shannon, for sure. And certainly Wolfgang does a great job throughout the movie. Well, Dawson and Downey grab this young soldier, who we will later find out is Santiago. They stuff a red gag in his mouth, wrap masking tape over and over again around his around his mouth and his head. And then as a struggle ensues, his arms are taped behind his back. As he screams, we fade to black. So a hell of an opening for this movie. It immediately puts us in a state of a tenseness and a concern for what's happening here, especially because later on in the film, we're going to be cheering for these guys who just did this. Well, as if to send a little mini message across the bow here, Rob Reiner cuts to an American flag and a rousing band, military Marine band, playing John Philip Sousa's Semper Fidelis March. A little background on this. This song was commissioned by President Chester A. Arthur, who told Sousa that he was tired of Hail to the Chief because it was a Scottish boating song and wasn't an American song originally created in America. He wanted something more appropriate for an American president. And Sousa composed two songs, Presidential Polonaise in 1886, and 2 years after Chester Arthur's death, he wrote Semper Fidelis. The march takes its title from the motto of the U.S. Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, always faithful, and it was dedicated to the U.S. Marine Corps. And we see the credits and title as we watch Marines go through their paces here and their rituals.
So, first of all, I like me some Sousa. You listen to John Philip Sousa, it puts you right in that place. Inventor of the sousaphone to allow marching bands to be able to carry their tubas everywhere they go.
Yeah.
And the thing about, so I had two reactions to this opening credit sequence.
Yeah.
The first, because there's two parts of it. Part one is the marching band.
Yep.
And my first reaction as I'm watching the credit sequence is, this is going on a kind of a long time. This is feels a little TV-ish. It feels a little like not that, like, why am I watching this marching band so long? And then they go to the Marines doing what I think is close order drill. And it is absolutely mesmerizing. I mean, I can't describe it. It's like watching the Rockettes. It's the most beautifully choreographed, and you can feel. And I think it's so brilliant that Reiner makes this choice as the way to open the movie, is that there is no way to get to what we're seeing without unbelievable discipline and hard work and practice and drill. That is the only way you get there, which is what it's thematically exactly what this movie is about. How do you get to the great fighting force without all the discipline and harshness? How do we get there?
I think that's what's amazing about the opening of the movie, because you get these two Marines attacking a young Marine and taping him up, followed by the pomp and circumstance of these well-drilled, well-disciplined, well-conditioned Marines performing mesmerizing drills, as you were mentioning, Steve, that show that as the audience, you have to sit back and respect what they're doing. So this is an exploration of the multi-faceted ways that you can look at something like a military force. And all of us who handle rifles in the military have an experience with this. I mean, watching it again for the movie, I reflexively was cupping my hands the way you're supposed to cup when you're holding your rifle, and presentation of arms, all of that stuff that I remember. And there is such an honor and respect that I feel when I watch drills like this, because I know how long these guys do it, and I know what the punishments are if they don't get it right.
What I love about this opening, starting with that, kind of brutal assault, is you're getting two different worlds. You're getting where our characters are coming from. You see what this base, this military base, is like in Cuba, where this horrible thing has happened. Then you go to what you already said, Johnny, the pomp and circumstance of this marching band, where it's like nothing like that would ever happen here. Look at what we do. The flags are waving, the horns are blaring. Then we see the discipline that goes involved with these rifle drills. And you're like, oh, what happens when you take those guys out of the pomp and circumstance and you put them in a forward operating base? And it's what you see at the beginning.
As we end these opening credits of Rituals, we cut to Demi Moore coming into view at the end of the line of one of these formations. She is playing Lieutenant Commander Joanne Galloway.
I mean, we're just moving into peak Demi Moore. As you said, there's some ups and downs in her career. She starts in General Hospital, and she's, this is the Brat Pack. This is Salem Almost Fire. This is, and of course, right around here, we get Ghost, Indecent Proposal, all the way through Striptease and G.I. Jane in 1997. That's the mid-90s. That's peak Demi Moore. And then we have her resurgence just last year with The Substance, you know?
Yeah.
And it was great. It was really great watching her because I think this is a unique movie for her and playing a unique kind of part.
Well, she reportedly agreed to negotiate her $3 million asking price down to $2 million because she was competing with the likes of Jodie Foster and Linda Hamilton for this role, and she needed a hit after she had suffered 3 box office failures in a row in The Butcher's Wife, Mortal Thoughts, and Nothing But Trouble. I don't recommend watching any of those movies. They're pretty not good. So you can understand she wanted this, and the studio rejected just about all the other actresses because they felt Demi brought this unique toughness to the role that they felt was essential for this role.
Well, also, she read for this.
Yes, right. She was willing to read for it.
I mean, and when you get to a certain level, the idea of auditioning starts to fade away because your representation is able to negotiate. They might meet with you. The actor might meet with you to discuss the project, discuss the role. They're not going to read, though. I mean, that is looked at, that can be looked at a certain level as like, no, don't disrespect our performer like this. Like, look at their resume. But she was so interested in this and had read the script and was just like, wanted this role, that's something she put out there. Like, I'm willing to come in and read for this. And so you could tell she knew what a special project this was going to be.
It's a funny thing. There are times, speaking as a director, there are times where you could suggest a person for a part, and my brain immediately goes, "Oh yeah, they could do this part," or "No way, they are not right for this part." And there are other people I really need to see, even if I'm really familiar with their work. There's sometimes just like, I gotta hear you saying these lines.
Right.
Like, and then frequently, and I'm sure both of you have seen this to some degree, frequently when an actor is wrong, you can tell it on the second line. If an actor can't act, by the way, you could tell it on the first word, on the first inhale of breath. Right. Sometimes you're like, oh, you can't act. Then, but rightness is this interesting thing too. And the best ones are when someone comes in and they don't deliver the character or the performance in any way that you saw, and you suddenly see a new movie, you know? But you need to, so there are times where you do have to see them read the part. You cannot know in advance.
Yeah, and I love that she beat out all these other actresses who were very much, booking work in their prime. I would argue Jodie Foster is as tough as they come. But I think that you have to, and this as a director yourself, Steve, that casting is about look and about status and about connection and chemistry, right? Yeah. Where is Tom Cruise? I'm sure Tom's like, you better cast somebody, but they cannot overshadow me. Jodie Foster might have overshadowed him, right? Another female actress might have overshadowed him, and possibly they were friends. Remember, he was in The Outsiders. He had a connection to the Brat Pack, so there might have been a thing where there's a familiarity, and maybe sensing that Demi was on a run of bad films, could have maybe championed her behind the scenes getting the role, and their chemistry is great throughout the movie.
Honestly, this is just my feeling about what I would see. When you first said Jodie Foster, I was like, well, shit, why didn't you go with her? I mean, like, that was my first reaction. And then I thought about the scenes where Tom Cruise is being an arrogant, condescending jerk. Right. And I went, oh, Jodie Foster wouldn't tolerate this. Yeah, this conflict doesn't work with Jodie Foster because I actually think she's too strong.
And of course, 92 is when Linda Hamilton comes out with Terminator 2, so she was fine. I think she was going to be fine.
She did okay.
I think if Kaffee gets smug with Linda Hamilton and Galloway, she's going to throw a right cross.
Yeah, right. Oh, you're sexually attracted? Bang! Anyway, all right. We see that she is walking into the Judge Advocate General Corps building in Washington, D.C. For those of you who may not know this, JAG is the legal branch of the United States Armed Forces. For those of you who maybe didn't watch the show that went on for years and years, it functions as both a military law firm and a court system to provide legal services to the military and its personnel. It was founded actually in 1775, before we had our full independence. They offer comprehensive legal advice and representation in areas like military justice, international law, and civil law. We cut to her walking in to see Captain West. As the door opens to the office, we see 3 men chuckling around a desk. This is a little hint of what's to come here about her as a woman walking into a male-dominated situation like this. She is greeted by Commander Gibbs, who is played by David Bowe, And she is introduced to Captain West, who is played by John M. Jackson, and reintroduced, we find out, to Captain Lawrence, who is played by Cameron Thor.
It's funny you mentioned Jag in the show, because John M. Jackson goes on to be on JAG as well as NCIS. And David Bowie also in things like Made in America. He's in Heavyweights. He's in The Rock. I mean, the funny thing about A Few Good Men is this is all just working actors, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people you're like, oh, and that person's in this and this and this. And I really feel like maybe to some degree this comes out of Rob Reiner being so hooked up into the TV world that he's just interacting with a lot of super solid working actors that led to, getting cast in this movie.
Well, it's
Yeah, that's a
that,
great
and there's
point.
one other thing. So
Go ahead.
part of it is the way it was either Kiefer Sutherland or Kevin Bacon to agree to be in the movie. He told them, look, I only have so much money. I gave half of it to Tom Cruise. I gave the other half to Jack Nicholson. So if you want to do this, you're going to be working real cheap. And so that is another reason that the character actors that you see, they are those working TV actors. They're the folks that are going to be thrilled to be working in a movie like this, and they are making scale plus 10.
Captain, I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice.
Would you like to sit down?
I'm fine, sir.
Have a seat.
Okay.
How can I say this? This is a great, character moment to understand Galloway. She is a woman who is very self-possessed. She will initially do what she wants to do, what she thinks is right. But here in this situation where there is a code of discipline and there's a chain of command, she will listen to the order, but she will initially resist it at first. So there's a little bit of Kaffee in Galloway, whether she wants to admit it or not, but for different reasons. And I love this as an intro to Galloway, because we see her kind of doing the speech to get herself psyched up to pitch herself to represent the two men. But here in this situation, she is still willing to be somewhat defiant in a moment with Captain West.
Well, only defiant for literally a moment. And so I said at the beginning, there's someone who I relate to the most in this movie. It is Demi Moore. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm quite as attractive as she is, but boy, do I feel works really hard. You can see her practicing what she's going to say, and then she blows it. She's old, because part of it, the not sitting down thing, it isn't just resistance. It's that she is not good at understanding the vibe of the room. Right. She doesn't understand the social circumstances. And there's so many times where I have found myself feeling very well prepared. I worked hard to get the very strong plan on exactly what I do, and then expressing myself in slightly a way that people kind of look at me funny and I feel out of place and off. And also she's so driven by this strong moral core. I mean, the big difference with her and Kaffee is that it is right and wrong that is driving her, and a certain perfectionism that is driving her, and it is driving her in all sorts of ways that are actually working against what her goals are, Right.
Just what we talked about when Harry Met Sally, like the growth they both have to go on in the movie. I think Kaffee and Galloway both have to go on their own journeys of growth as well, because of how they approach the world. And I think it's a fascinating thing to watch them as they go through it.
2 Marines, a Lance Corporal Harold Dawson and a Private Loudon Downey, entered the barracks room of a PFC William Santiago and assaulted him. Santiago died at the base hospital approximately an hour later.
So now we have essentially the story of this movie, that this is what happened, and there's going to be a court case around this thing. We have a little bit of the information. Now, as I said to you guys before, this was, Aaron Sorkin was inspired to write this because of his sister getting into JAG, and then this case that she was taking on. In the actual case, which I'll give a little bit of details for later on after the movie is over, the gentleman survived this encounter, did not die from this encounter, but in the film, they have Santiago die, which I think is much more potent when you look at.
You always,
the story.
it's always, the TV show is not called Major Crimes She Wrote. It's called Murder She Wrote. We're always going to add almost every mystery. It's very rare that there's not a murder in it.
True. We hear that the NIS, which is the Naval Investigative Service, for those who may not know that.
The precursor to NCIS.
To NCIS, right? The NIS, exactly. The agent who took Dawson and Downey's statements maintains that they were trying to prevent Santiago from naming Dawson in a fence line shooting incident. For those of you who may not know what a fence line shooting incident is, that is an alleged illegal act where Marines fired weapons across the fence line into Cuba.
What's the problem?
Dawson and Downey are both recruiting poster Marines, and Santiago was known to be a screw-up.
And then she drops the hammer on them.
I was thinking it sounded an awful lot like a code red.
The reaction that goes around the room when she says this is because immediately they know that just saying those two words is trouble, and you can see it's trouble they don't want to get involved with.
Christ.
Again, what I tell you about this stuff, when you're in the military, this is real shit. You get worried about this stuff, and you hear about it, and there's always one. Well, in my experience, there was always one in your platoon that was in danger of getting a blanket party, a code red, or something, because they somehow do not adhere to what the principles and disciplines of the service are, and they thumb their nose at it, either purposely, either directly or indirectly. And it's always a fascinating thing to watch, and the reaction of the people around them to the whole thing. It's really an interesting sociological experiment to experience when you're in the military.
So I saw Full Metal Jacket when it came out in the theater, and sitting next to me was my friend, our friend Jeff Johnson, who had literally just got out of basic. He came home from basic, I think, 2 days before. And when the blanket party in Full Metal Jacket happens, I literally could feel the tension coming off of him. And I looked over, to the point, you think you're sitting in a dark movie theater and suddenly you feel something's going on with my friend. Yeah. And he kind of almost crawled into himself. And after the movie, I asked him, because there had been a code red, or not a code red, but a blanket party in the next barracks while he was in basic.
Well, and also, Johnny, and you can speak to this from firsthand experience. A lot of times, whether it be a sergeant, someone of a higher rank, if one person in your group screws up, everybody screws up. And everyone is responsible for this one. Everyone gets punished because of the actions of one person. And that's where this sort of disciplining of their own kind of springs from. Yeah.
Yeah. It's meant to make you understand that we're all a team, and we need to be thinking of everything as a team. Later on, Dawson and Downey are going to give us their list of what's important in their rankings. And that's what it's meant to do. But at times, it can be twisted into something like this. It can come back into something like this. And it's their way of self-disciplining within the military, their own platoon, their own squad, and what can happen from that. And it all depends on how the person in charge of the squad is disciplining these things, whether it's done in a smart way or in a brutal way. And clearly we see from the opening of this movie, it's a very brutal way. And now we've heard that this kid died. Santiago died. And then Galloway launches into the speech we had seen her practicing, which Steve was mentioning, walking up to the JAG building.
Sir, I'd like to have them moved up to Washington and assigned counsel. Someone who can really look into this. Someone who possesses not only the legal skill, but a familiarity with the inner workings of the military. In short, Captain, I'd like to suggest that I be the one that it be me who is assigned to represent them myself.
And she stumbles right at the end. Right at the end.
This is classic Austin Powers. Allow myself to introduce myself.
Myself.
Andrew Galloway, why don't you get yourself a cup of coffee?
And as Steve mentioned, she's not really good at reading the room.
Thank you, sir. I'm fine.
And Captain West dismisses all subtlety and says,
Commander, I'd like you to leave the room so we can talk about you behind your back.
Steve, have you ever had that moment for yourself where someone said, this is what we're trying to tell you, without being subtle anymore?
Have I had the specific moment where someone was hinting that I should leave the room and I didn't pick up on it?
No.
Have I had moments, all sorts of moments in my lifetime where I have suddenly realized that I had misunderstood a situation that I was in the middle of, and it was embarrassing and horrible, and I had to figure out ways to extricate myself with some level of class? No, that has never happened to me in my entire life. Yes, it's happened to me. Honestly, I can literally go back and feel sick to my stomach right now about something that happened in the 80s.
Wow.
I hold on to embarrassing moments, like precious jewels. So yes, this has happened to me many, many times.
Well, now West, Gibbs, and Lawrence discuss the Code Red accusation. This is great for us because I didn't know about a code red in 92. It was not called a code red when I was in like the Army, right? Because this is specifically Marine stuff. Code red accusation. We hear that they didn't think it went on anymore. Lawrence responds that with the Marines and Gitmo, who knows what goes on down there? And that immediately lets us know that there's division here between the people up, as Shannon was saying, the people up in the kind of higher areas or in these kind of areas, and the people who are down there at a place like Gitmo who take it very seriously, where discipline is super important because of the seriousness of the situation that they're in.
I thought this code red shit wasn't going on anymore.
With the Marines at Gitmo, who knows what the hell goes on down there?
And then he wants to know about Galloway. And they talk about Galloway and her experience. Lawrence and Gibbs both give their opinions on her expertise and experience.
She's not cut out for litigation. She's a hell of an investigator, Jerry.
And internal affairs, sure,
opportunity.
she can crawl up a lawyer's ass with the best of them. But when it comes to trial work, I think... I know. All passion, no street smarts. Bring her back in.
And we have this exchange between Galloway and West.
Commander, we're going to have the defendants moved up here in the morning.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll have division assign them counsel.
But not me.
Now, here comes Galloway, the same person who wouldn't sit, the same person who wouldn't take a coffee, to say to her commanding officer,
Sir, I think there might be more involved than that.
Don't worry about it. I promise you, division will assign the right man for the job.
it's not being overt that there's maybe an issue with her being a woman. It's more about her experience, but certainly saying right man for the job can't be ignored as an exchange between the two of them.
I mean, it's 3 corrections he gives her in a very short amount of time. And the first one is sort of kind of plainly spoken, like, have a seat. And then he tries to be polite in sort of a passive-aggressive way, saying like, hey, why don't you go get yourself a cup of coffee? You know what? We want to talk about you behind your back. And the expression on his face, he is very, very serious that this conversation is over. You are not going to be doing this. We are going to find someone else.
I have sort of 2 parallel thought processes going in because A, it is clear there are issues with Galloway. She isn't, in fact, the right person. Regardless of whether she's not the right person if you want to go for the easy plea deal, she's also not the right person if you actually want to try this case. There are issues with her. But there's also, and I do think they are playing on the sexism in exactly the way an early 90s film would play on the sexism. Right. I actually am genuinely bothered by the treatment of Galloway throughout this movie in a lot of different ways that we'll get to as we go on, which is why. So I think in terms of the film right now, they're setting it up exactly right in terms of what these issues are.
Yeah, and I think you can still have the hint of sexism, but also throw in the experience factor, which makes her a much more interesting multidimensional character. And we just got introduced to her having to prepare her speech as she was walking across the front lawn there. So you would imagine the person who can do this job wouldn't need to be practicing her speech to pitch herself doing this job if they could do the job. And so it's a good thing to kind of have her have some vulnerabilities and allows us to connect to Galloway's character throughout the movie even better. Speaking of the right man for the job, we cut to Tom Cruise, also known as Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee in this movie, basically having softball practice and trying to get this poor kid named Shervy to get some line drives here as he's hitting the ball to him, and it is not going well.
Horrible infielder, by the way. This guy, like, if they're playing for some sort of championship, which Kevin Pollak references later, this is not the guy that you should have out on the field.
He should be in right field. And that's the only place you put a guy like that who can't field grounders.
But by the way, I don't think this has ever come up on the podcast before, but since we have Shannon, who's a screenwriter here as well, there is a weird job screenwriters have to do sometimes that we never discuss, which is I need to have a little business as we go into the scene. Which is, and it's not important, but I can't go, like we talk about the sort of enter late, leave early rule of like, okay, we're right in the middle of the scene. Well, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes we have to show up to the scene. And this particular is a bit of business. Fielder can't field the ball. Tom Cruise working with him. We have 28 seconds of that before the actual scene starts, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't remember this scene in the play. My guess is that this was probably what happened initially is you cut over to Kaffee's office and Matt Craven's character comes in and from on stage, that's a nice transition. On camera, it's going to look kind of boring that you go from one office to another office. So one, you're able to provide a little something dynamic that you're getting to watch a little bit of a sport. I mean, it's practice, but then you also get a change. You get a change of venue, but also you get to know this is where Tom Cruise's character's priorities are.
Mhm.
He's concentrating on softball.
I think it gives you, just like the intro with Galloway, I think it gives you insight into Kaffee in this. He is running that softball practice.
Oh, yeah.
And he is actually helping someone who isn't that good and encouraging them. So there is that element that's going to come out later with Dawson and Downey. Once he cares about something, he is willing to fight for them or help them or support them. And clearly, even though it's being playful and sarcastic, whatever, he clearly wants Shervy to be able to ground these to get these line drives that he's hitting to him. So
Well, but it's not out of compassion for this poor player. It's because he wants to win the game.
Well, I don't know, Steve. I don't know Lieutenant Kaffee personally. I'm just erring on the side that he cares about this kid. But you might be right. You might be right. Maybe it's more of a selfish desire to win.
He's a little nurturing. As you know, if you keep your eye on the ball, it increases your chances of catching it by a factor of 10. This is not a bad softball coach in terms of instruction.
I didn't say he was a bad softball coach.
But anyway, as Shannon mentioned, we see a naval officer walk up who is not happy with Kaffee. This is someone does not want to hit line drives to. This is Lieutenant Dave Spradling, played by Matt Craven, who Steve and I recently talked about and discussed on our Crimson Tide episodes, who made quite a career for himself in the 90s playing military guys or police guys. I remember him in High Incident, one of my favorite films, or shows rather. Anything more we need to say on Matt Craven, Steve? I know we talked about him on Crimson Tide.
Frankly, I think he made a strange career choice requesting that transfer from the Judge Advocate General's office onto the Alabama for Crimson Tide. I think that was maybe not such a good choice. Yes, we saw him in there. He's also in Jacob's Ladder. He's in K2. He said The Juror, X-Men First Class. Again, another solid working actor filling out this movie.
Kaffee!
Dave, you seem distraught.
We were supposed to meet in your office 15 minutes ago to talk about the McDermott case. You're stalling on this thing. Now, we either get it done, and I mean now, or no kidding, Kaffee, I'm going to hang your boy from a fucking yard arm.
Yard arm? Shervy, does the Navy still hang people from yard arms?
Like, he's 99.9% sure they don't. He's like, I don't actually know this one. Let me throw it over to my guy at second base. But then as he kind of systematically dismantles Matt Craven's argument, he's also hitting the ball at the same time, which lets us know that this guy has a brilliant legal mind, that he can do two things at once.
To let you all know, in the Royal Navy, the yard arm was sometimes used for hanging criminals such as mutineers or deserters. And it's used for supporting sails or signaling. So if you ever see what a yard arm looks like, think about being strapped to that thing as punishment. And I'll tell you this, it's the one grounder in the entire scene that Shervy actually caught. Was the yard arm situation. So,
That's funny.
And I think that he missed that meeting on purpose, knowing that Spradling was going to come find him in the softball field. And he already knew how he was going to get Spradling to agree to the deal.
I'll recommend 30 days in the brig with loss of rank and pay.
It was oregano, Dave. It was $10 worth of oregano.
Yeah, well, your client thought it was marijuana.
My client's a moron. That's not against the law.
But Kaffee, I got people to answer to just like you do. I'm going to charge him.
With what, possession of a condiment?
He knew he was going to be able to get this thing done. So he did it on his turf. One of the things they tell you about customer service is when someone's angry, you move them away from the place where they're angry and move them down to the counter, move them to someplace else, walk towards them and move them into a softer area. And it somehow subconsciously makes them calm down. And in a way, having Kaffee hold court here in the softball location makes Spradling lose his temper, which causes him to be easier manipulated by Kaffee and get to that end result.
I think this is a great introduction in all the because what we're going to deal with Kaffee is a mix of positive and negative traits. Is that this establishes right away he's charismatic, he's quick on his feet, he totally understands the system, he out-lawyers Matt Craven in every direction and sees every angle. It is also about a not important case. It just shows it's not that he cares about this guy. And it's interesting. This is why, and I'm sure this came out in the 8 months with Rob Reiner and Aaron Sorkin. It's not just, as Shannon very, very clearly laid out, why visually and in terms of excitement, it's better to be at the softball field than it is at the office. But we also see that Kaffee wants to win. That both of the circumstances, helping this guy with softball and negotiating this plea deal, are him playing a game. And he takes both games just as seriously. They are both games to him. That is the key thing for me about Kaffee's character. At this point, it's a game.
Dave, I tried to help you out of this, but if you ask for jail time, I'm going to file a motion to dismiss.
You won't get it.
I will get it. And if the MTD is denied, I'll file a motion in limine seeking to obtain an evidentiary ruling in advance. And after that, I'm going to file against pretrial confinement. And you're going to spend the next 3 months going blind on paperwork because a signalman second class bought and smoked a dime bag of oregano.
So we use this scene, Steve, to basically give us a window into Kaffee as a lawyer. And while he's running a softball practice, he's able to negotiate a good settlement for his client. And this comes into play later when we look at what happens with Dawson and Downey and Kaffee's approach to Dawson and Downey. This is a nice character moment for him on the professional side of Kaffee's character.
Well, and also we see what Kaffee can do, what Galloway can't. Kaffee can read a situation.
Right.
He can read a person. To support your theory, John, that if he missed that meeting on purpose, it's because he got to know Matt Craven. He's just kind of like, all right, we're not going to do this here. We're going to do this out here.
And they go back and forth until they settle on a C misdemeanor, 15 days, restricted duty.
I don't know why I'm agreeing to this.
You have wisdom beyond your years.
We cut to a slightly darkened room now where we see Kevin Pollak seated at a table in a room full of Navy officers. He is playing Lieutenant Sam Weinberg.
So it's funny, you said, I think, that this was where you discovered Kevin Pollak.
Yes.
I had known Kevin Pollak a long time when I was thrilled to see him in this movie because, and I think I mentioned this recently on one of our podcasts, that there was a morning radio show in San Francisco called Alex Bennett was the host. Alex Bennett had all of the stand-up comics come in, and I listened to this all through high school. And one of the regulars, because he was a San Francisco Bay Area stand-up comic, was Kevin Pollak. He was on the show all the time. So I had listened to him for years, thought he was absolutely hilarious when he showed up on this. This, by the way, I think this is my favorite Kevin Pollak performance. He's in tons of stuff. Obviously, Usual Suspects and a bunch of other stuff later on. He's in Willow. He's in Grumpy Old Men. He's great in Casino. And later on, Santa Claus and Dr. Dolittle, and has continued to be a working guy. This is my favorite. I think this is my favorite movie of his.
Well, it's funny you say that because he said many times this was his favorite experience making a film, was doing A Few Good Men. He just had a wonderful time on the set. But he might not have been cast in the film if a certain thing hadn't happened. The original choice for this role was Jason Alexander, and he was signed on and set to play this role. But why didn't he play the role? I'll tell you why. Because of Rob Reiner. Because Rob Reiner fought for a second season of Seinfeld. It got renewed, and because it got renewed, Jason Alexander could not play Lieutenant Sam Weinberg anymore on the film, and we had Kevin Pollak come in.
I'm so glad it's Kevin Pollak.
Me too. Me too.
I love Jason Alexander.
Me too.
Yeah.
But he's not this guy. There is a difference in their comedy that Kevin Pollak's comedy works for this type of story better. Yeah. We talk about the characters that we see ourselves in. I totally see myself as a Sam Weinberg. I mean,
so again, I wasn't going to say it, that I'm Demi Moore.
What totally
and that you would be Sam, and that John is Jessup. And let me tell you, I know who Kaffee is too, just so we're real clear.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, we all know who Kaffee is.
Who's Kaffee? You think it's
he's
Vogel?
the other geek buddy, obviously.
No, you think he'd be Kaffee? Interesting. All right.
I'm not saying he would play Kaffee.
I
am saying
you mean in this situation?
Kaffee.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
You would play Jessup. I'm not saying you are Jessup.
I don't know. After seeing the movie, this between us, after seeing the movie, I might find myself a little more Jessup than I thought. In the room here now, we have Captain Whitaker who walks in, and that is played by the great character actor Xander Berkeley.
If we needed something to prove the point of the working actors that are showing up in this movie, I mean, Xander Berkeley, his first gig, I think, was in an episode of MASH in the early 70s. I mean, he's been in all the TV of, Moonlighting and Miami Vice and the A-Team and X-Files and all of that. He's also in T2. He's in Shanghai Noon. He's in Heat. He is in a ton of stuff and is always good. always good. And by the way, I will say a tour de force performance alongside Pamela Anderson in Barbed Wire. That is Xander Berkeley, man, right there.
I was just going to say Barbed Wire. That is the one thing I'll always remember about Xander Berkeley. Anyway, we get an exchange about Sam's baby, who's about to say her first words when Lieutenant Kaffee walks in late to the meeting.
Excuse me. Sorry I'm late.
All right, Danny, I know you don't have a good excuse, so I won't force you to come up with a bad one.
Thank you, sir.
This first one's for you. Seems you're moving up in the world. Been requested by division.
Shows up late, doesn't even have a pen.
Nope.
But I want to be real clear about what I'm about to say.
Okay.
We have, John, you and I have had arguments about objective versus subjective. And what I'm about to say is fully in the camp of subjective. This doesn't have to do with the quality of the film. I really, really like the film. There are not one but two characters in this movie that are like tailor-made to piss me off. And one of them is Daniel Kaffee. This is like... This is the picture of privilege. He's both privileged. He's privileged because he comes from wealth. He's privileged because he comes from success and fame in his field. And he's privileged because he has unbelievable talent. Unbelievable talent. And he walks around with that everywhere he goes. And it pisses me off over and over and over again in this movie.
And it must piss you off because he's very good at what he does.
He is good.
That's what I'm saying. That must add to the piss off nature for it because there's no punishment for how he is overall.
And he's done this through his life, his whole life.
Yes.
He's not studied for the test, come at the last minute to the moot court and kicked ass, and everyone said how awesome he was. And that was true. He was awesome. And that has caused him to have behavior after behavior after behavior that we see in this film that pissed me off.
What's that line in Apocalypse Now? You just knew he was going to get out of the war without a scratch, without so much as a scratch.
A Marine corporal named Dawson illegally fires a round from his weapon over the fence line and into Cuban territory.
What's a fence line?
Sam?
A big wall separating the good guys from the bad guys.
Teacher's pet.
So there is our window into this relationship. They know each other, they bust each other's balls, but they understand the friend. They understand the connections they have with each other.
What do they say?
Not much. They're being flown up here tomorrow, and on Wednesday at 0600, you'll catch transport down to Cuba for the day to find out what you can. Meantime, go and see Lieutenant Commander Joanne Galloway with Internal Affairs. Any questions?
Probably responds with a question that would piss Steve off. He says, the flight to Cuba was at 0600 in the morning, sir?
The joke is, but yes, no, you're right. It did piss me off. It does piss me off because what he does is, he is the definition of willfully ignorant. Is that he chooses to not know about things and then makes jokes. This is a joke about him going, yeah, I know I am willfully ignorant, but I do know about this hour thing. It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. Yes, he pisses me off the whole movie. but again, it's like that is what the movie is. This is a coming of age movie, as you said. Right. We have to start off in a certain place, so that he can grow to another place. And I'll tell you, the movie that kept ringing. I am certain that Rob Reiner was thinking about this movie. It's one of your favorites that we did on the Cine-Files recently, which is The Verdict.
Oh,
is that there is so many little moments in this movie that connect to The Verdict. And I'm not saying that Kaffee is the same, obviously, as the Paul Newman character, but these are both characters that have to learn profound lessons throughout the entire movie.
I mean, I absolutely can go to the place that the Paul Newman character in Verdict when he was younger was just like Kaffee.
Oh, I bet.
100% can see that. Wow, I never thought about it. That's a great connection, Steve. Shannon, as an actor, when you see what Tom Cruise is doing here, I mean, because this can easily veer into, as Steve said, overall irritation from the audience, and not just a small percentage of the audience. Your thoughts on how to walk this line when you're playing a character like this?
Well, I can't do it because I'm not Tom Cruise. I mean, there is a very specific type of actor that is able to pull a role like this off successfully. And this goes back to it's not always the best actor, it's the right actor. In this case, they got a really good actor in Tom Cruise.
This is his specialty. I mean, I am arrogant, but you like me anyway, guy. I mean, this is Maverick. You know, like this is if there's no human on the planet, no actor who has ever been better at walking this particular line than Tom Cruise.
Yeah, there are a lot of actors where their likability actually works against them, where it's like, I don't buy you in this role because I like you. And at this point, I need to not like you. But where for this particular role, being sort of the kind of young hotshot, but also kind of lazy. I mean, like, you know, and Galloway gets into this, like he is coasting for as long as he can until he can hop out. He can finish with the JAG Corps and get his 6-figure salary someplace else. Tom Cruise is a marvel at this. I mean, I've had a lot of auditions for roles that are kind of adjacent to this, like kind of a hot shot. And I'm like, look, I can memorize the lines. I can come up with my choices. I can come up with those beats. But at the end of the day, sometimes you are something and sometimes you aren't something. And this is why I am Sam Weinberg in this cast, and I am not and have never been Daniel Kaffee.
And speaking of Sam, one of the reasons Daniel Kaffee can be Daniel Kaffee is because there's someone who is always picking up the slack, and Sam gets assigned to be his assistant, essentially, for this case, which Sam does not want to be. But Xander Berkeley tells him that he'll be handling administrative things, backup, whatever, to which Sam replies, in other words, I have no responsibilities here whatsoever. Right. My kind of case.
What I think is really interesting about this, by the way, so 2 things. One is, and we'll talk about this more later, is this is a case in which there are, in fact, 2 Hermiones helping out Harry Potter in order to succeed as the hero of this mission. But the other thing that I think is subtle but really important that comes up later for Sam's character. When you first watch this scene, I think it's like, I don't want to be Tom Cruise's assistant again. You know, like, I don't want to have to why do I always have to do the shit work for this arrogant guy, you know, who I like, but it is talented. I don't want to do that. That's what the scene plays at. But when you watch the whole movie and then you go back again, you're like, no, he doesn't want to represent these guys. He is opposed to the case.
He's probably read the case.
That is why he's actually resisting.
That's a great point. You can absolutely motivate that observation on this situation because you know that Sam probably read all these cases before Captain Whitaker assigned them. So that's a great point, Steve. Now we cut to Kaffee and Sam walking into Galloway's office. Speaking of her, she's on the phone, but Kaffee interrupts her anyway.
Daniel Kaffee, I was told to meet with
He pulls out a crumpled piece of paper.
Lieutenant Commander Galloway.
Again, these are character beats. He disrespects her time. He loudly eats an apple. He's got a crumpled piece of paper with a name on it of the person he's supposed to meet. This is conveying the DGAF attitude in human form. For sure.
He wipes his hands off on his uniform.
On his uniform, yes! Great point.
Again, my father served in the Navy. I remember this brown uniform, this tan uniform. You never wipe your hands off, especially in front of a superior officer. You do not wipe your hands off on your uniform.
Well, this is, I mean, him walking in, and I go back to, John, your point about the softball game and him intentionally moving that meeting to the softball game for an advantage. He's not accidentally walking in eating an apple. No. He didn't accidentally crumple up that piece of paper. And this is the thing to me. And when you brought up the sexism thing from before, it's like there's sort of difference between like how I might have felt about it then and how I feel about it now. She's a lieutenant commander. He's a lieutenant, 2nd grade with 9 months experience. I had to look it up. So that's 2 full ranks above him.
Yeah.
And to get to a lieutenant commander, it's 10 plus years of experience minimum. That the disrespect shown towards Demi Moore's character throughout the whole movie bugs me. And it's like, and it bugs me in one sense in the way that it should bug me because that's what they're trying to do. You know, they're supposed to make Tom Cruise be an arrogant jerk in parts of this movie. But
And
there's
you're
a
supposed to
level
like her.
of
And you're supposed to like her, right?
yeah, but there's a level of acceptance of the way that this mass, significantly outranked person is being treated that I actually don't like in the film as we go along.
Well, you're not the only one, because Galloway takes a moment and sizes him up.
Have I done something wrong?
No, it's just that when I petitioned division to have counsel assigned, I was hoping I would be taken seriously.
No offense taken, in case you were wondering.
And now Sam tries to defuse the situation here.
Commander, Lieutenant Kaffee is generally considered the best litigator in our office. He's successfully plea bargained 44 cases in 9 months.
One more, I get a set of steak knives.
Sam laying out how many cases he has successfully plea bargained in 9 months. We didn't talk about it in Galloway's initial meeting, but they talk about how many cases she's basically done. And it's like 2 years. It's like 3 in 2 years. And so you see the different schools these two come from. And obviously Galloway thinks the way she does it is right. So to see the polar opposite walk into her office disrespectfully, as you've already pointed out, that sets the stage for this great dynamic that these two are going to have for the rest of the movie.
I think what's so great about this is that we essentially get the objections to each of these people set up really, really clearly very early. As you said, that she's too slow and he's too fast.
Yes.
Is that they and what it does is it means, they on some level are each other's other half. They are what the other one needs. On their own, neither of them actually can be a great lawyer. But together, maybe they can be if they can get past the conflicts that they have.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing when you look at them because he is good at what he does, but it's because he doesn't care about the people that he does it for. She is a little slower because she cares too much. And as Steve was saying, that's the thing they have to figure out, that middle ground.
Have you ever been in a courtroom?
I once had my driver's license suspended.
Danny.
Commander, from what I understand, if this thing goes to court, they won't need a lawyer. They'll need a priest.
No, they'll need a lawyer.
And Galloway hands Kaffee the case file, which he hands to Sam, doesn't even open it, doesn't even look at it, because his hands are still kind of sticky from the apple, maybe. And she delivers more info on the situation.
Downey's closest living relative is Jenny Miller, his aunt on his mother's side. She hasn't been contacted yet. Would you like me to take care of that?
Sure, if you feel like it.
I think, sure, if you feel like it, reveals so much about who this guy is. Because, and this is what it is, and I think, again, we go back to starting at the softball diamond. This is a game, and there's a way that the game is played. And depending on, it's like if you get dealt a hand with, a jack and a 3 and a 6, you're not going to bet big on your Texas Hold'em game. You don't have a lot there. And so what Kaffee is looking at is, what is the hand I'm dealt? This is how you play this hand. And she is looking at a completely different thing. She's looking at, there are humans involved here.
Yes.
People that matter, whose lives are at stake, and truth. And so when she's talking about Aunt Jenny, it's because that's the right thing to do. Someone should be notified that their nephew is in jail and facing a serious crime. And his response to that is, sure, if you feel like it. Because the humans involved are immaterial to Daniel Kaffee in terms of doing his job. That has nothing to do with playing the game.
Right.
In the cases that he's plea bargained, he's never met a client's family.
No, I don't think so.
Why
Not
would
on
he?
purpose. Not on purpose. Yeah, I agree with you. But that's what allows him to be great at his job, I would argue, or good at his job, whatever your assessment is, because he doesn't get personally involved. And for some lawyers, that is the way to do it. Some it's because they can get too involved and get too sensitive. Others because that's just better for them in the way they operate, because they actually have a bit of a sociopath inside of themselves. It's an interesting situation.
One of the people we'll be seeing down there is the barracks CO, Colonel Nathan Jessup. I assume you've heard of him.
Who hasn't?
He hasn't.
He's been in the papers lately. He's expected to be appointed Director of Operations at National Security Council.
Really?
Kaffee's genuinely impressed here. Like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. There are certain moments where Kaffee gets caught on his heels, for sure.
Well, because politics matter to him. That's part of the game.
Right. Good point, bud. Good point. Galloway says these are the letters that Santiago wrote in his 8 months at Gitmo.
Finally, he wrote to the Naval Investigative Service, where he offered information about Corporal Dawson's fence line shooting in exchange for a transfer.
Right. Is that all?
Lieutenant, this letter makes it look like your client had a motive to kill Santiago.
Gotcha.
So amidst all the funny repartee, the back and forth, the tense stuff going on with Galloway and Kaffee, we are also getting more information on Santiago, who at times becomes a forgotten character in this movie because we're caught up in the star power of these people.
And Santiago is who?
The victim.
And I love that, every once in a while we're peppering in more information. We're peppering in more of the idea of what was going on in the situation, what was going on for him, that he was so desperate that he did all of these things, which most soldiers would never think to do. He was going above and beyond to try to get himself out of the situation.
I think they do a fantastic job of making us ambivalent about Santiago. That there are times where you really feel terrible for this person. And then there are also times because you like, particularly Harold Dawson, is that there's this feeling of how he fits within the community of the Marines that does, or I will just speak for myself, that does make you go, oh, he wasn't a team player. What, it's like, how are we is that they don't just present it as he was a screw up and terrible, and they don't just present it as he was a victim of the horrible and cruel Marines.
Right. It was just a bad situation all around.
12 years.
I'm sorry?
I'll get them to drop the conspiracy and conduct unbecoming. 12 years.
You haven't talked to a witness or looked at a piece of paper.
Pretty impressive, huh?
So now we have our window into how Kaffee is looking at this thing. He has read the file. He has looked at all of the information. And in his mind,
he hasn't read the file or looked at all of the information.
He's
looked at some of the information.
Okay. All right, that's your opinion.
No, it's not my opinion. He doesn't know who Colonel Jessup is. He literally hands the files over. He has not looked at all the information. He can't have looked at all the information.
Where do you land on this, Shannon? Has he read some of the case, all of the case, or none of the case and just gone straight into plea bargaining?
As loyal as I am to my fellow geek buddy, I do have to side with Mr. Morris here. I think if he had an opportunity to look at any of that material, it would have been on the walk from the first meeting to the meeting at Galloway's. And my guess is
good point.
He's probably not going to be reading much on that stroll. He's more going to be talking to Sam.
I mean, there's no way he could have read all of the information on this case today.
Yeah.
I'm
going to go in the middle ground. I think you guys are right, but I'm going to go in the middle ground and say that Sam probably gave him a briefing. He's like, Sam, sum it up for me. Give me the
Well, and I think if you're not going to pursue the code red, that I think what everything Kaffee said is actually right.
Yeah,
he is 100% right that 12 years is the right plea bargain for this situation.
Yeah, Steve, going on what you said earlier, like Sam doesn't want to do this case, so Sam is going to brief him in a way that feels negative towards Dawson and Downey. So Kaffee is going to come away thinking they're guilty. So let's plea bargain this down to 12 years and be done with it.
It is negative towards Dawson and Downey at this moment because that's all we know. All we know is this guy said something negative about Dawson. There's no question about whether or not they taped him and that they did what they did.
Yeah.
So it is very damning right now.
You're going to have to go deeper than that.
Commander, do you have some sort of jurisdiction here that I should know about?
And this rankles Galloway.
My job is to make sure that you do your job. I'm special counsel for internal affairs, so my jurisdiction's pretty much in your face. Read the letters. I'll expect a report when you return from Cuba.
Sure.
You're dismissed.
And in that smirking Tom Cruise kind of way, he looks at her and says,
I always forget that part.
Keep this in your mind for a little bit further down the road. Kaffee getting up before she dismisses him. As Steve said earlier, she is 2 rankings above him. And the fact that he is willing to still kind of violate certain orders, it's an interesting, or certain discipline and protocol. It's an interesting thing about Kaffee that we're going to see in someone else a little bit later on in the movie. And then we have this exchange with Sam and her. Sam trying to, which he's done probably a million times before, trying to smooth things over.
He's a little preoccupied. Team's playing Bethesda Medical next week.
Tell your friend not to get cute down there. The Marines in Guantanamo are fanatical.
About what?
About being Marines.
And it's yet another hint that lets us know how things are going down there in Guantanamo and how hardcore those Marines actually are, and giving us a foreshadowing of the buzzsaw that Kaffee and Sam are about to walk into when they meet up with Colonel Jessup.
I think being fanatical about being Marines is a fantastic line that sets up so much about what this movie is going to be about.
All right, so now we cut to a voiceover of PFC William T. Santiago. This is played by Michael DiLorenzo, some of you may remember him as a series regular on New York Undercover and Resurrection Boulevard. Such a fantastic young Latino actor who did a lot of things. Shannon, what do you remember him from?
I remember him from Head of the Class. I want to say it was the season that Howard Hessman had left, and who took over? The Scottish, was it Billy Connolly?
Billy Connolly. It was Connolly, yeah.
I think it was.
That.
I think it was the season that either Billy Connolly took over, or maybe it was the season before. Maybe it was still Howard Hessman. I just remember that some of the regulars of the students. So Head of the Class was a show in the 80s about a group of really, really smart students at this esteemed school in New York. That some of the regulars had left, and that they had I think 3 new students, and Michael DeLorenzo was one of those students.
I remember him on New York Undercover with that was a big show. I think Malik Yoba was his partner on that show, and that was a big deal as well, kind of around the NYPD Blue time as well. So, and right off of 21 Jump Street. So, but here we hear Santiago reading his letter, informing us of his struggles as a Marine.
Dear sir, my name is PFC William T. Santiago. I'm a Marine stationed at Marine Barracks, Rifle Security Company, Windward, 2nd Platoon Bravo. I'm writing to inform you of my problems with my unit here in Cuba and to ask for your help.
As we're hearing him start this letter and say these words, we're seeing him run out of his barracks. He's clearly discombobulated. He's behind everybody else. He's frazzled a little bit, falling into line, falling in for roll call, and all of that stuff.
Watching him right at the beginning, I continue to go back and forth about what am I seeing? Because, and it also depends, I think, on if you've seen this movie before. Because this is a dude he's a Marine. He's already been through basic. He's already been probably through specialty training. This is a tough guy. I mean, I know that intuitively. And yet what I'm seeing is a person that's struggling, that's not keeping up, a person that doesn't seem organized, that seems frazzled. And I think one of the things this movie does really well is putting you in the double position of feeling, oh, this guy isn't up to snuff on some level. And then also, this is not fair. This guy is being abused. He's being mistreated. And of course, the second time you see the movie, oh, he might very well have a congenital heart defect. And that's what's actually going on here.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd never gotten that far in my mind. It's more a matter of my experience in the military. And there was always 1 or 2 guys who weren't up to snuff, who couldn't quite get on board, whether it was a mental issue, a physical issue, just could not catch up and get these things in their body. And we see the extreme example, of course, in Full Metal Jacket with what happens with Vincent D'Onofrio's character, right? That's the guy who can't catch up, but then is emotionally destroyed in order to catch up. But what it all leads to is horrific. Here we see that Santiago is struggling with the whole situation. And I think this is a way for Reiner also to do exposition with, but making it work in the status of the movie.
Knowing what's going to happen later, that this theory that he does have some sort of heart defect. Does a heart defect make you late? No. But what a heart defect does is if you are falling behind, you start to become a burden to your company. There is a snowball effect that happens. And part of that be he's not resting well because he's thinking about, nobody likes me. You see him eating. It's one of the most heartbreaking visuals is seeing how he is ostracized at mealtime. That the rest of the Marines are chowing down, and everyone is kind of not arm in arm, but everyone's next to each other. You see him in the corner by himself. You see him looking over,
and I can tell you that is a legitimate thing that happens. That it's almost like you're back in high school. That people don't want to eat with you because they feel either that you're not up to snuff, or even if they felt sympathy for you, being connected to you affects them with the other Marines. So there's all kinds of stuff that happens sometimes in the military with people who are not stepping up to the plate.
And yes, I mean, I think you go through basic training as a Marine, you are going to be, you feel like you're going to be an efficient serviceman. But when this heart defect kind of takes over, you see the effect that goes with everything. And it really is truly heartbreaking.
I think some people get confused. Basic training is like entry level. It's like 101.
Yeah.
When you go to the next level, which is what I did, the AIT training, that's a whole nother exploration, whole nother set of challenges. You have more freedom but more is expected of you as well. And so it's those kinds of things. And then when you go and serve full-time, clearly there's a whole nother level of things that you have to deal with, politics and what have you. And I don't mean politics. I mean politics within your actual platoon, within your actual barracks, within your actual company, all those other things, along with the responsibilities that you have to carry throughout and base life. There's just so much. So every level, like a video game, like life, has its own set of things that you have to deal with. And clearly here, him on this base, he was not prepared to deal with life on this base.
Well, and there are things from speaking to people who have served, is there are all sorts of levels, because there's there's basic and there's AIT and then there's Ranger training and SEAL training and forced recon and Green Beret and all these. And the sense you get is these dudes at Guantanamo, they're on the far end of what's expected. And what I was curious about, John, when you're watching, I know maybe it's hard to remember how you felt the first time, but watching it having served in the military. Oh, you saw this before you served in the military.
No,
right?
after. Because I served in 90 and this came in 92. Yeah.
So watching this after you served, not knowing where the movie's going to go, how did you feel about Santiago's isolation or lagging behind or not keeping up with the platoon?
I've always felt sympathetic for that because, it was a fear I had going in, as I talked about earlier in this episode, going into basic training. Like, would I be able to hang? Would I be able to do what they needed to do? Because again, I grew up a fat kid. I grew up a kid who was bullied. So to me, going into a situation like this, hardcore military, I did it for my reasons. I wanted discipline. I needed to lose weight. I needed to get my mind straight about my life. And so that's why I joined. Yes, I love my country and all of that is just factored in. But the other elements personally, those are the reasons I joined. So I had sympathy for Santiago and what was happening here, because I always had sympathy for the people in my platoons or companies who weren't stepping up, and I always wanted to help, which is why they made me third squad leader when I was in AIT the whole time, because I wanted to help people. Anybody who's falling behind get caught up, So yeah, I always feel sympathy for Santiago and the way he's treated here. But as I've gotten older, I've also understood that sometimes you got to be hard in the military because when you get those bullets flying over you, if someone isn't ready to step up, that can cause people to die on a battlefield. And that's real, and that's the honest truth. Beyond Hollywood, that's the honest truth. And Reiner is so smart, I think, with this letter, because not only is his exposition, but he's talking to us. And we as the audience now are getting to know Santiago. And we hear from this performance from De Lorenzo that I think is very, very moving. He says,
I've fallen out on runs before for several reasons, such as feeling dizzy or nauseated. But on May 18th, I'd fallen back about 20 or 30 yards, going down a rocky, unstable hill. My sergeant grabbed me and pushed me down the hill. Then I saw all black, and the last thing I remember is hitting the deck. I was brought to the hospital where I was told I just had heat exhaustion.
We see the visuals of him falling behind. We see the sergeant pushing him down, and we see him just laying flat on his back, clearly knocked out from the physical attack from this sergeant, or drill sergeant possibly.
Well, and again, this is the ambiguity of this movie, and it becomes less ambiguous at the end of is this training or is this abuse? Is this what is necessary to create a real soldier who is going to protect America from its most dangerous foes? Or is this bullies picking on someone who is weaker in cruelty?
Yeah, and I liken this to our conversation in Crimson Tide. You saw the movie in one way, I saw the movie in another way. I think a lot of people see who with a more of a progressive liberal bent will see the film in a certain way and feel sympathy for Santiago. I think more people with a more conservative bent or more, and I'm not saying this stereotype, I'm not just trying to stereotype, generalize, just saying it feels like this would be, they would look at it and see some of what Jessup is doing, some of the training they've seen, that's necessary to weed out people who are a little bit weaker, because this is serious business protecting this country in those situations.
This is why I like Sorkin, is that because the most convincing, persuasive, charismatic, articulate character in this movie is Colonel Jessup.
Yeah.
And he gives him speeches that you go, fuck.
Yeah.
100%. So I think putting that kind of power and articulate ability in who is essentially the bad guy in this movie is what makes this part of what makes this a great film.
Please, sir, I just need to be transferred out of RSC. Sincerely, PFC William T. Santiago, U.S. Marine Corps.
And this is a big PS.
P.S. In exchange for my transfer off the base, I'm willing to provide you with
information about an illegal fence line shooting that occurred the night of August the 2nd.
And as he puts the letter down, we see the face of Jack Nicholson come into view, and this is Colonel Nathan Jessup.
This is like this is a Jack we haven't talked about yet, because we have talked about Jack Nicholson in like part one of his career, because we've talked about Cuckoo's Nest, we've talked about Chinatown, we talked about The Shining, which is, I would say that's sort of the end of the younger Jack as we move into, terms of endearment and all those things that start to happen in the 80s. And this guy, this is a whole other Jack that we now get to get. And this movie can't even exist without Jack Nicholson. That's how important he is to this film, as far as I'm
100%. He was paid $5 million for 10 days of work. James Woods auditioned to play Jessup, but Jack Nicholson was cast, and he was cast after Gene Hackman had turned down the role because he was busy playing Sheriff Little Bill Daggett in Unforgiven.
Wow.
So I think the only other person you could go with here is Hackman, right? But
Hackman totally could do it.
Right, yeah, but I think having Jack here is such an interesting energy, because Jack had been a part of these like counterculture protest type of films, Easy Rider, Cuckoo's Nest. So to have him now represent the military hard-ass guy with this high-top haircut, I think is a fascinating decision at the time.
Well, and there is a slick charm that Jack Nicholson cannot escape from, and he is able to use that in sort of an unexpected way. I think when you think of a general, or a colonel, excuse me, a colonel in the military, Gene Hackman is a very easy cast. Like that makes perfect sense. Putting Jack Nicholson in this role, you see why he has ascended the ranks the way that he has. That not only is he a capable military officer, he's charming. And there's something about him, like you understand that guys, men and women, will fall in line behind this guy. And I truly think this is one of Jack Nicholson's greatest performances. And if this movie had not come out the same year as Unforgiven, he wins the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
Totally. I also think this is Jack exploring the darker edges of men, right? Because you see Few Good Men, Batman, he plays the villain, right? My Two Jakes, he comes back. That's really not a good sequel to Chinatown. But A Few Good Men, he plays a villain. Then he plays Hoffa in the same year. And by the way, that was an issue because he was mad at, I think, Columbia Pictures for releasing A Few Good Men near the same time as Hoffa, and he thinks that affected Hoffa's box office. But he's also in Wolf right after that, 2 years later in Wolf, The Crossing Guard, Blood and Wine. So these are more like in this middle, like early 90s, middle 90s, he's exploring the darker edges as an actor to challenge himself. And then, of course, we get to As Good as It Gets in 97 and wins the Oscar. So it's an interesting journey he's on as an actor, coming into a second prime, I feel like, in the 1990s.
Who the fuck is PFC William T. Santiago?
And he's asking the question to Kiefer Sutherland, and he is playing Second Lieutenant Jonathan Kendrick.
I love Kiefer Sutherland in this era. I mean, it's so funny because as we speak, I've been doing prep researching Stand By Me, which is, kind of where I had first really seen him. He's obviously Donald Sutherland's son. And this era of him with Lost Boys, Young Guns, Flatliners, the young Kiefer Sutherland is so great. And in particular, I think, in Stand By Me and in A Few Good Men, because he is damn scary. He is able to tap into a very specific kind of scary thing in both those movies in different ways. That is great. And Lost Boys too.
And there's a quality to Kiefer Sutherland, especially when you know about his personal life and the peaks and valleys he's gone through. Prior to this, Kiefer Sutherland was very rock and roll. Like, this is a rebel. This is a guy who's going to thumb his nose at authority. So to see him step in a role like this, very similar to Jack Nicholson, you see him going 180 degrees in the opposite direction and still putting in an incredible performance, which speaks to the talent of Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, he's just one of these guys that people love. 24, and then the most recently Rabbit Proof or whatever it was that he was on CBS. Like, he has this knack, or Designated Survivor. He has this knack that people who grew up with him in the 80s and the 90s, they come back to him all the time and they love to watch his work. He's a very gifted actor. I don't know if I would ever put him better than his father, but I would say he's delivered some consistently interesting performances through the years and been a bit of a chameleon at times with what he's able to do, which is always great to see. The less said about his Christmas movie last year with Rebel Wilson, the better. But let's move on.
Private Santiago's a member of 2nd Platoon Bravo, sir.
Yeah. Well, apparently he's not very happy down here at Shangri-La because he's written letters to everybody but Santa Claus asking for a transfer. And now he's telling tales about a fence line shooting.
Steve, this is interesting because you can, right off the bat, Jessup is not a guy who is hearing this letter, reading this letter, and feeling sympathy for Santiago, and even says he's telling tales about a fence line shooting, which is a very serious accusation.
I mean, this is where Rob Reiner has set this up perfectly, because what we have experienced is what Jessup hasn't experienced, because he didn't see the montage where Santiago is struggling, where he does get pushed down that hill, where he's sitting alone. Not that I think Jessup would care. He'd probably applaud all that stuff. Right. But like what Reiner did was he built sympathy in the audience for this thing, so that by the time we hear Jessup dismissing all of it, we're mad about it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Exactly. Also, this is happening timeline-wise, right? This is before Santiago's death. Yeah. Right. Which they kind of expect the audience to catch up on to figure out where this is. But there's another person in the room, and he turns to that person and says,
Matthew.
And Matthew is Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Andrew Markinson, played by the late great character actor, J.T. Walsh.
I mean, this movie is such an embarrassment of riches of these kinds of actors. J.T. Walsh, obviously fantastic in tons of things, including, as you just mentioned, he's in Hoffa, he's in Nixon, Sling Blade, Dark Skies, he's in Wired. I love him in a movie nobody talks about very much from Barry Levinson, which is Tin Men. I love Tin Men. And he's also in Good Morning Vietnam. And as you said, tragically died at the age of 54 in 1998.
Looking at casting breakdowns, a J.T. Walsh type is something that is referenced a lot. In the wake of his passing. I think even before he passed, if you didn't think you could get J.T. Walsh, you wanted someone as close to J.T. Walsh as possible, because he is the definition of a naturalistic actor. This is someone, every line that he says is something you could be overhearing in a public space, in a diner, in a store. And because he was, taken so young, like it is truly a shame that we didn't get to see what else he had in store.
I always call them the Walshes. Emmett Walsh and J.T. Walsh. Those two guys, if you want to be a character or an actor in Hollywood, study those two guys. You will get there. Even Rob Reiner felt this way, as you guys were talking about, especially you, Shannon, when you said that he felt that J.T. Walsh was a natural and understated actor. And his whole goal, Rob Reiner's whole goal was to have the entire cast be, quote, as good as J.T. Walsh. So that tells you
that's
how
high praise.
Much respect. Yeah, that is high praise for sure.
I'm appalled, sir.
You're appalled. This kid broke the chain of command and ratted on a member of his unit, to say nothing of the fact that he is a U.S. Marine, and it would appear he can't run from here to there without collapsing from heat exhaustion. What the fuck is going on in Bravo Company, Matthew?
I think, as Shannon described so well, the contrast between the J.T. Walsh style of acting and what Jack is doing is part of what makes this whole thing work. And what's so... the level of shade that comes from Jack Nicholson, there just isn't, I don't know there's anybody who can, we've said like no one is better than Tom Cruise at playing the cocky guy, no one, I don't think nobody can out Jack. What he does in this scene is astounding. And as I said before, there are two characters in this movie that really irritate me. And the degree to which Colonel Jessup pisses me off is so high. Every moment I want to punch. I hate this guy. And he's so charismatic and so great. But oh my God, everything he does drives me nuts.
Because he radiates the kind of guy that a lot of us have probably worked for, who you could not convince of anything. And he will do what he wants to do, no matter what you think. And if you try to contradict him, he will passive aggressively, snidely destroy you casually in conversation, and even in front of other people. It's that, and even try to code it in like ball busting, which is really the worst.
He's the living embodiment of swagger. Like that is Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
Colonel, I think perhaps it would be better to hold this discussion in private.
That won't be necessary, Colonel. I can handle this situation, sir.
The same way you handled the Curtis Bell incident.
Sir, my methods of leadership...
Don't interrupt me, Lieutenant. I'm still your superior officer.
And I'm yours, Matthew.
what is the Colonel Curtis Bell incident? This is clearly like an indication that maybe this has happened before on the base, and this leads to a battle between Matthew and Kendrickson that Jessup has to kind of stop it in its tracks.
So several things about it. So first of all, we find out later on what the Curtis Bell incident was, which is that's where Dawson was feeding this private or whatever that he was ordering on zero food for a week. That's what that is. I think so. First of all, your subordinate says we should talk about this in private. He shuts down his subordinate, cutting his legs out from under him in front of this inferior. Then, when the subordinate tries to establish his rank over his own inferior, Kendrick, he shuts down his subordinate again and sides with Kendrick against his second in command. This is terrible for leadership. Well, in one sense, it's great. Jessup I am sure he has the complete undying loyalty of a whole bunch of Marines like Dawson and Downey and Kendrick. And here's a guy who's saying we have real problems. You're second in command, and he just undercuts him directly. It's terrible.
Well, I mean, Markinson for the enlisted men, my guess is that Markinson is the stick in the mud. Like nobody likes this guy. This guy's the pain in the ass. Whereas Jessup's awesome. I'll follow that guy anywhere. Markinson, that's your grumpy step parent coming in to throw cold water on everything.
Yeah, and I always feel like, and I know we're going to get to Jessup's belief of what happened in their relationship and why Markinson is the way he is, but I have to believe that people that are higher up know what Jessup is like, essentially like a meaner version of Patton, and they felt like, well, we need to assign someone to him that's going to balance him out. And Markinson is in a way like he's almost like the concierge. He's like the Robert Duvall to Sonny's. To James Caan's Sonny a little bit, trying to get him to understand. And it's ironic too that here is Jessup talking about the rules and what a Marine should do and following the rules, but here he is breaking the rules for his own convenience in having this conversation in front of an inferior officer. So it's a fascinating moment.
It's funny you mentioned Patton because in a way it's like if Patton didn't slap that soldier and get taken out, this is the Omar Bradley relationship.
Yeah, right. Good point.
He's the guy looking out for the enlisted man who's pushes back against all of Patton's swagger and craziness.
I think Santiago should be transferred off the base immediately.
He's that bad, huh?
Not only that, but word of this letter's bound to get out. He's going to get his ass whipped.
As we said, Markinson much more for the soldiers, Jessup much more for about like, how do we bury this problem and not deal with it?
Well, I would say I would frame it just slightly because Jessup wants to deal with it.
Well,
he wants to deal with it in a very specific way.
Yeah. In a burying kind of way to force him to stay on the base and ignore his grievances, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and kick the shit out of him so that he becomes a good Marine.
Yeah.
Markinson wants to surrender, and Jessup is he's not going to take that.
That's a great point.
You know what it is? So I think it's like a coaching disagreement. It's that there's one person who's like, we have a problem player in our front line. Let's do a trade and bring in somebody else. And Jessup is going, we play with the team we have. That is what the point is. We
paid $75 million for this kid. He is going to learn to play our style of football no matter what. Yeah, that kind of thing. And then Jessup launches into a demeaning monologue.
This is some passive aggressive shit coming up right here.
Sure, you're right. I'm sure that's the thing to do. Wait, I've got a better idea. Let's transfer the whole squad off the base. Let's, on second thought, windward. Let's transfer the whole windward division off the base.
He then calls in Tom, who is played by Joshua Molina, and tells him that, tell the president we're surrendering our position in Cuba. So this is all clearly meant to undercut Markinson and ridicule Markinson in front of Kendrick. It's insane.
I love that Josh Molina, who obviously is a Sorkin guy from Sports Night and West Wing, and hosted I did the Star Trek podcast. The other TV show I would love to do a podcast on is The West Wing, except that Josh Molina and Ricky Gershaway already did West Wing Weekly, and it's so damn good that there's not a reason to compete. But I love that he just says, yes, sir. And I also love that the cuts to the reaction shots from Markinson tell very clearly This is not his first rodeo of having to deal with Jessups. He's heard this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He's been dressed down in front of people many, many, many times before.
And by the way, little tidbit, Joshua Molina, the only member of the original cast to appear in his role in this movie.
Maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, maybe we have a responsibility as officers to train Santiago. Maybe we as officers have a responsibility to this country to see that the men and women charged with its security are trained professionals. Yes, I'm certain that I read that somewhere once. And now I'm thinking, Colonel Markinson, that your suggestion of transferring Santiago, while expeditious and certainly painless, might not be, in a manner of speaking, the American way. Santiago stays where he is. We're going to train the lad.
What just as you said, Steve, a coach's speech here, saying clearly what's going to happen, but absolutely scoffing at Markinson. And this speech this time around, listening to it, considering what's going on in our country right now, really hit me. This idea of the American way. This is the American way. This is the America that I believe in versus the America you believe in. And it's just like, it's an interesting clash of ideologies just in this exchange and in this mini monologue that he delivers here.
First of all, that's Sorkin. Like that rhythm of the language, and I'm sure that this is a huge part of why Jack wanted to do this, is you get to say these words because there is a rhythm to it, there's a build to it, there's all sorts of character, there's a level of an articulation within Sorkin dialogue that says, I believe that people can speak like this. Just as like if you're watching David Mamet or you're watching Quentin Tarantino or Patty Chayefsky, where they have an elevated style of language. And so first of all, the language is great. And the second thing is that Jessup is totally right up to a certain point. And this is what I love about this movie is, guess what? There are times people need to be pushed out of their comfort zone. You don't get through basic unless you have that drill sergeant yelling in your ear
100%.
and pushing you to do things that you did not think you were capable of over and over again. And to have any organization, but particularly a military organization, you need cohesion. You need people who push beyond those boundaries. You need to be able to, everything that Jessup says is right, except that it can go too far. That's the big thing. The big thing about this movie is not to go, Jessup is right or wrong, is to go, oh, there's a balance to be struck here between the code of the Marine Corps and this sense of justice. And that speech is so damn good.
Jack's ability to make menacing humorous is one of the things that's why he was the guy for this part. Like, again, you give that speech to Gene Hackman, Gene Hackman's going to knock that speech out of the park. Gene Hackman is going to be terrifying the entire time. Whereas Jack Nicholson, wait, I've got a better idea. Like, there's just such an ease with what he does that you know that this, you've seen the posters, you've seen the trailer, you know this is the bad guy, but you're still leaning forward, going, what is he going to say next? And that is a gift that all actors want and very few actors have.
Very true. I think this is like in pro wrestling terms when the guy puts the arm around the guy he's going to betray and tells him and walks him to a location and then quickly clotheslines him at the end there.
John, you're in charge. Santiago doesn't make 4646 on his next proficiency and conduct report. And I'm going to blame you. Then I'm going to kill you.
Yes, sir.
And I think he's only half joking when he says this to Kendrick. And by the way, the 4646 is a system by which the performance of enlisted men are rated on a scale of 0 to 5.0. A score of 4.6 corresponds to a rating of excellent. So that was clearly an inside baseball type of thing for Marines to catch who were watching the film.
I didn't know that, and that's great to know because it's not saying I want Santiago to do average or just pass the test. He's saying I need him to be excellent. I also think then I'm going to kill you. Now, do I actually think that Jessup has any intention of murdering Kendrick if Santiago fails? No. But this is where we get in this world of like language and symbol, and I'm not to make it political, but there is language in the world today where it's like, wait, do you actually mean that? Because that sentence, even if Kendrick knows, I do not think I'm going to be murdered, the sentence, then I'm going to kill you, does absolutely affect the severity of the code red that he's going to order on Santiago, because that goes downhill.
And kill you doesn't have to be murdering you. I can kill you by giving you more tasks, not promoting you, talking bad about you to other superior officers so they never give you opportunities. Like, there's a way to kill someone in the military without even laying hands on them.
Putting a mark on his permanent record that's going to follow him everywhere he goes.
I'm going to kill your career.
Yeah. Basically that. Yeah.
And having not really knowing that system, but being able to extrapolate what he's saying, improvement is not enough. You have to be perfect. You have to take this below average Marine and make him perfect on his next report. I mean, Kendrick was not going to be able to do this.
I think that's a mistake, Colonel.
Matthew, I think I will have that word in private with you now.
So when Markinson asks to talk in private and says that it should be, he completely shuts him down. And now the moment anything critical happens of Jessup, oh, now you want to talk in private.
Yeah. Which we'll find out in a second why. But first he has to dismiss Kendrick, and he tells him,
John, that's all. Why don't we meet at the O Club and have lunch, and we'll talk about the training of young William.
I'd be delighted to hear any suggestions that you might have, sir.
I want to ask this question to you guys. What do you think the relationship is beyond father and son? Is Kendrick, was he a lost soldier that Jessup took a shine to and made his personal project and got him to this point? Is he the son of one of Jessup's buddies who served and maybe died in service, so he's got a responsibility to raise a kid this way? There's just an interesting connection between them in just this introduction and exchange in this scene that it makes me think there's much more going on in the backstory between these guys.
I can't remember who said this. It may have been an off-mic conversation the three of us were having, or it could have been someone else, but they were talking about how Kendrick was being groomed, that this is the guy that maybe went to West Point and everything. That's not how I see it.
I agree.
I see this is someone from the rural South who, if he didn't go into the military, he was not going to have a lot of options. And that he took a shine to the discipline that is required of someone in the Marine Corps. And I think maybe this is a guy that was picked on or the object of ridicule as he grew up. And he is now able to dish it out. That's kind of how I saw it.
So, but for me, when we get to this idea of a father-son relationship, there is no question in my mind that Kendrick sees Jessup as a father figure. That is 100% true. But what I don't think is true is that Jessup sees Kendrick as a son figure. And I think, and this relates to what happens in the next scene, which is, and always when you're watching a movie, when a character says something, that doesn't necessarily mean the thing that they said is the truth. But in the next scene, he asks Markinson, what is your opinion of Kendrick? And before Markinson can answer, he says,
I think he's pretty much of a weasel myself, but he's an awfully good officer. And in the end, we see eye to eye on the best way to run a Marine Corps unit.
So the question is that in fact what Jessup thinks of it? And I think it 100% is what Jessup thinks of Kendrick. I don't think he really gives a shit about Kendrick so much as that he sees him, this particular kind of weasel, is the kind of officer he can use to get what he wants. I don't think there's no son relationship at all, but he looks at Kendrick. That's why he invites him to lunch, is he looks at him and he's like, you idolize me. I can use that because I need more minions to do my bidding, and you are going to do anything I tell you to do from now on.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. Sadly, in all walks of life, even in something that is supposedly for a higher purpose like the military, there are, for lack of a better term, cult leaders or cults of personality. And the people who are leaders of them, they know exactly how to groom young men in the military, sometimes young women as well, who are insecure, who are desperate, as Shannon was mentioning, this is much more of a hard scrabble kid. He coming up and getting some power in his life coming from a powerless situation and getting some power in his life. And now he's, in essence, been turned into a disciple of Jessup and will do whatever he asks of him. And we see this all over our world through many decades. And certainly now we're seeing it in our world even more so.
Yeah, Jessup sees his Marines as tools.
Yep. Yeah, tools for his benefit to use as he sees fit.
We're in the business of saving lives, Matthew. That is a responsibility that we have to take pretty seriously, and I believe that taking a Marine who is not quite up to the job and shipping him off to another assignment puts lives in danger.
And then Matthew does something really curious. He just stands up. Markinson stands up and is walking out without being dismissed, kind of like Galloway, kind of like Kaffee, without being dismissed, gets up and starts to walk out, and Jessup tells him,
"Sit down, Matthew."
This is, I mean, it's all power moves. Jessup has done nothing but power moves, mostly to dominate Matthew and to enthrall Kendrick from the beginning of this scene.
I think he sees Markinson as the wrong way to be a Marine. Yeah. And he sees himself as the better way to be a Marine. And, you know, we haven't talked a lot about Reiner's directions so far throughout this conversation, but this moment is such smart direction. Now he comes around, Jessup does, to the front of the desk, and he sits on the front of the desk, and we see the camera angle from Jessup's point of view towering over Markinson, almost like a kaiju over its people, the towering shadow that's on there. And now he goes into what he thinks is going on here and what he's probably felt has been going on here for a long time.
We go back a while. We went to the academy together. We were commissioned together. We did our tours in Vietnam together. But I've been promoted up through the chain with greater speed and success than you have. Now, if that's a source of tension or embarrassment for you, I don't give a shit. We're in the business of saving lives, Lieutenant Colonel Markinson. Don't ever question my orders in front of another officer.
And now he walks out. So as Steve, you said, power moves. Him sitting above Markinson is a power move. Him bringing up their past and essentially insinuating the only reason you have issues with what I do is because you're jealous, not because it's your legitimate point of view or your legitimate feeling. And then he uses his full name like a father might, Lieutenant Colonel Markinson with the rank, and tells him not to question him ever again. And he walks out as a control. You don't walk out on me, I walk out on you. So it's an interesting exchange here that gives you it gives you a window into their relationship, you know.
Is Jessup a better officer and a better Marine than Lieutenant Colonel Markinson?
I think they're both combined the right Marine. But I do think they're both approaches have their issues and have their faults. And so that's why I don't know if I can say one is better than the other. Of course, in the end, what he does ordering the code red, that's not good. But then again, you cannot have a military that's very touchy-feely about all the soldiers. You're not going to get there. You're just not.
I mean, and I think in this moment, don't ever question my orders in front of another officer. Jessup is right. Like, that is how the house of cards starts to fall. The moment I allow this is the moment that the foundation starts to get shaky. So I'm going to nip this in the bud right here. Now, again, the level that he takes it is wrong.
Right.
But in terms of how a military unit is supposed to function, one person has to be the one making the call at the end.
So many thoughts. The first one is, of course, I totally agree. You don't question the officer in front of an inferior officer. But that officer blocked your opportunity to speak to him in private and insisted that you speak in front of the inferior officer,
exactly.
Which makes it a little bit more complicated. I don't think that Markinson handled it, because he handled it aggressively when he said, I think that's a mistake. I mean, that's a hard line. That's the first thing. It's funny. I actually think, in a weird way, it's really lucky that Kaffee didn't outrank Galloway, that Galloway was the one who outranked Kaffee, because Kaffee would have treated Galloway much like Jessup is treating Markinson,
probably,
if he could have.
Yeah.
It's the fact that Galloway had the rank and had some power that forced Kaffee to improve and to become a better person. And Jessup doesn't have that. As far as them as officers, I think there's probably no question that in Vietnam, in terms of military success, in terms of operational efficiency, Jessup kicked ass. I think there's reasons that he got promoted faster than Markinson. And I think there are also reasons that Markinson, in a different sense, is a better officer than Jessup because he wouldn't order the code red. Because part of the thing is like, what Jessup is saying is to ship off our bad player to another team is wrong and puts people in danger. And I understand that. But he's also saying, this is the most important military installation in the world.
Right.
We need the best of the best. And sometimes shipping that guy off would have been actually what saved lives. Get someone else in there who could do the job.
It's an interesting scenario. I don't buy into the jealousy. I don't think there's anything of jealousy, because the thing is, people who aspire to ambition and have drive, they think if other people undercut them, it's because they're jealous of their drive because they have no drive. And that's not always the case. There are people who just don't want to be in power, don't want to be the top dog, but they still want to be around the power, still want to be like an advisor to the power. There's certainly people like that. We see that everywhere, because not everybody can be a leader. Then there's going to be no followers. It just doesn't make sense. And it's a lesson I learned early on. I dated a girl who I really thought she was very talented, very gifted in what she can do. And she was happy just being part of the chorus. And I said to her, don't you ever want to be the lead in these musicals or in these dance things? And she kept telling me, no, I have no desire to take on that responsibility. And it was shocking to me because I thought she was incredibly talented. It was a wake-up call for me. Like, not everybody has that drive and ambition, and they're happy with it. They're fine with it. And I think Markinson's one of those guys.
Do the people that actually don't want to sit in the big chair are the most valuable people in the world?
Yeah, that's not a lie. I think I agree with you.
Yeah, if you crave power, you shouldn't have it. For the listener, John did not agree with my statement.
Well, nothing's 100%. Anyway, so we cut to Dawson and Downey arriving at a barracks in D.C. They step out of the car, and Downey asks Dawson,
Al, is this Washington, D.C.?
All right, let's move.
It's a small moment in the movie, but it quickly conveys that we're in D.C., but also the relationship between these two guys. One is a alpha and one is a beta. And you make it clear, for lack of a better term, one is just a little more in charge of the other than the other one, right? And so we see that between Downey and Dawson in this moment. I think it's important to give us a little hint of what's going to come when we have this meeting with Sam and with Kaffee later on in the mill.
I think it's more than just one's a little more in charge. Yeah. Downey's totally, Dawson is totally responsible for Downey. Downey can't do anything without Dawson's say-so or leadership. And I also think it's important that the establishing shot before we go into the scene, our DC establishing shot, and we return to it many, many times, is the Iwo Jima monument.
Yeah.
Is the most important. It's the Marines monument, the most important, most heroic sign of Marines working together in impossible circumstances, life and death, to serve America. That is the backdrop of against which we're putting this film.
We've now been introduced to a number of duos: Galloway and Kaffee, Kaffee and Sam, Markinson and Jessup and Kendrick, and now we have Dawson and Downey. So it's an interesting exploration throughout the whole movie of the relationship of the superior to the subordinate. How do they handle their power as superiors, and how does the subordinate handle their position as a subordinate? And I would say because Joe is the higher ranking, she is the superior to Kaffee, even though Kaffee at times thinks he is the superior in how he treats her sometimes. And so it's a fascinating exploration throughout the whole movie of these relationships, We cut to Kaffee, who is back on the softball field taking batting practice with Galloway, who is there to talk to him right outside the fence.
I wanted to talk to you about Corporal Dawson and Private Downey.
Say again?
Dawson and Downey.
Those names sound like they should mean something to me, but
Dawson, Downey, your clients.
The Cuba thing, so Dawson and Downey, right.
Now, does he know about Dawson and Downey being in D.C.? Is he pulling her leg? Like, what is the reaction here. Does he know the names of these guys for real, or is he just messing around with her?
I don't feel like this is the situation when we meet him on the softball field from earlier. I think he has actually put this aside and is focusing on softball practice, because I don't think there is a benefit to him pretending like he doesn't know this, because they're on the same team.
Right. So this is not him and Matt Craven negotiating down. This is more a matter of like, he just put the case file away and he's good. He's moving on.
Do you guys have both, I'm sure, been at a bar where people are playing pool and you joined a pool game, and some people, when they go to do a pickup pool game, will go, "Oh, I'm really good at pool." And some people will go, "I never really play pool." It's where do you put the expectations before you play pool? I think that Kaffee, as a default, always makes jokes to put the expectations low. I think, and because there are times when he genuinely doesn't fucking know what he's talking about, what is a mirror, or shooting incident or things like that.
Right.
And so, but then there are also times where he does actually know that 1600 is 4 o'clock, and he's making the joke about being stupid. So he puts the jokes across the board, and sometimes he knows it, and sometimes he doesn't, because he is both putting out putting out arrogance, and also lowering expectations around him so nobody knows what to expect. I think this is something he's been making jokes like this since 4th grade. That's what I think.
And they've worked.
They've worked.
Yeah.
Done something wrong again, haven't I?
I was just wondering why 2 guys have been locked up since this morning while their lawyer's outside hitting a ball.
We need to practice.
That wasn't funny.
It's a little funny.
Again, I asked, does he know that Dawson down here in DC? Or is this, again, his default, as you just said, Steve, his default reaction to just be playful about this stuff?
I don't know how work hours are actually worked in the military. Like, I know you have your days off. I think there's a possibility maybe this is Kaffee's day off. And he's like, I don't care that they're there. I'm off the clock. I think that's kind of a distinct possibility, whereas Galloway is always on the clock. The moment she finds out a client of hers is there, she wants to attack the problem right away. Whereas Kaffee's like, man, it's Saturday. I don't work on Saturday.
There's a human element here. It's funny. I'm so glad, John, you brought up the parallel of Jessup and Markinson with Galloway and Kaffee, because what's interesting is like Jessup's like, this is what you do. If a Marine is fucking up, you kick him in the ass until they don't fuck up. That's how you do it. Kaffee is like, look, the game is played a certain way. You plea bargain, this is what it is, and I'm just playing the game. And Markinson and Galloway are actually care about the human beings involved. It isn't, I mean, like, what I feel that Galloway is feeling is these poor people are in jail. Like, they need a lawyer. They need people that, like, there's a human element. It's not just the job of trying the case. It's that she actually cares about these 2 guys, you know? And Kaffee, it hasn't even occurred to him that these are humans yet, you know?
Yeah. It feels very clear that they have 2 different ways of approaching the situation. And look, Kaffee has all this experience, but just because he has more experience than her doesn't mean his approach is correct. It's correct for just bargaining this thing down. Galloway's approach, it's much more about getting justice, right? Kaffee's approach is much more about getting to a resolution because he doesn't think these guys are innocent yet. He doesn't. And so to him, this is just more about pleading
they're not
down.
innocent.
Well, in terms of the way that he wants to fight for them for justice and all this kind of thing, he's not there. He's not where Galloway's at yet on this, which is why he's taking batting practice on the softball field and doesn't know, in my opinion, I don't think he does know, that they're in D.C. Then Galloway drops the hammer here, and here we go into a power struggle.
Lieutenant, would you be very insulted if I recommended to your supervisor that he assign different counsel?
Why?
And I don't know how to take Kaffee's why here. Is it why because he knows she would do this and this is a playful why? Or is the why like legitimately questioning why she would think that?
You don't even know me. Ordinarily, it takes someone hours to discover I'm not fit to handle a defense.
There's a pause, and then he says,
oh, come on. That was damn funny.
Which it was. I agree. It was funny. Look, as a person who can't lay off jokes myself, I totally appreciate this.
Shane, I want to ask you a technical question as an actor. How hard is it to hit balls and say these lines on time when you're doing a scene like this? I can't imagine he's actually swinging at real softballs. I think this is more a matter of like simulation. But your thoughts on this, and then delivering lines that hit the timing right on something like this.
I think doing anything while you're delivering lines, if you are tasked with doing, that's why walk and talks are so impressive, that you have to walk at a certain pace because you're going to get to this corner and the camera's going to go one way and you're going to go another. There was, I did an episode of the Teen Wolf for MTV many years ago, and they wanted to do sort of a Michael Bay shot where the camera is just going around me in a circle. And like I was playing a police dispatcher, and that dialogue, like normally you can kind of find the emotional arc of a scene, and that is a way to memorize lines. Is like, all right, this is what I'm feeling here. This is what I'm feeling here. When it's police dispatcher dialogue, or like On the Pit, when it's medicalese, it's like, there's no emotional arc to this. This is just stuff. And you have to say the stuff correctly. So being tasked with this long police dispatcher speech, and then the cameraman comes over, he's like, hey, every time the camera is to your right, look to the right. Every time the camera's to your left, look to the left. Also, I was in a rolling chair. And he's like, we want you to stand on here, but you can't stand too hard because you're gonna push the stool out and it's gonna get in the cameraman's way. So that is all to say, this type of thing. I mean, again, whether or not he's actually hitting the balls or not, that's a thing. But it is incredibly challenging. So yeah, this is why Tom Cruise is a great actor. It's not just his ability to deliver lines, it's his ability to multitask.
So I have now studied the scene as Shannon was talking. I went through and watched it. It's funny. We've now have 2 movies in a row where someone is hitting baseballs, because Billy Crystal was with Bruno Kirby in the batting cage.
Right.
And in the framing of that shot, it is almost all full body. And so you see every pitch. And Billy Crystal hits a damn good number of those balls.
Yeah.
And he's hitting lefty, I think, which is not his normal. He's a right-handed hitter. That's impressive. So watching this with Tom Cruise, there are almost no shots where you can actually see a ball. You see him swinging, but Reiner has very carefully framed it. So it's mostly shoulders and arms and a little bit of wrist, but it's not a wide shot. There's only 1 or 2 shots where you actually see a ball. So I actually don't think Tom Cruise is necessarily hitting a lot, but I'm on what Shannon says. This is still so technical. And to be natural while you're doing this other thing and all the things that Shannon just described that you're worrying about, this is hard.
Yeah, because there's comedic beats. This is not a back and forth dramatic. Like, there are comedic beats, so that you have to time the pauses so that you hit them for dramatic effect or for comedic effect. And it's a lot of staging involved in this, for sure.
You're wrong. I do know you.
She reveals his name, his birthday, where he went to school, which is Harvard, his dad's accomplishments.
And now you're just treading water for the 3 years you've got to serve in the JAG Corps. Just kind of laying low till you can get out and get a real job. If that's the situation, that's fine. I won't tell anyone. But it's my feeling that if this case is handled in the same fast food, slick-ass, Persian bazaar manner with which you seem to handle everything else, then something's going to get missed. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I allowed Dawson and Downey to spend any more time in prison than absolutely necessary because their attorney had predetermined the path of least resistance.
Boom.
But just absolutely addresses him, right? But I also think this is really interesting when I watched it again. She had just done a movie with Dan Aykroyd, Nothing But Trouble. And this feels like she's doing Joe Friday. Like, if you watch this pacing and the delivery and the style. And I also think this is why she was cast, right? What we said earlier, they wanted someone who could deliver this kind of toughness. And there is a toughness to Demi Moore's delivery of these lines that I think are so much fun to watch in this moment.
First of all, again, this is the full Sorkin. I mean, this is what, and it's a test. I think for the most part, she handles the Sorkin dialogue really well. And she has that. It's so interesting because I keep thinking about that Jodie Foster was one of the other people. And what would Jodie Foster have done with this dialogue? But watching this is the thing is, this is what we want, is that we enjoy Tom Cruise's incredibly charismatic, cocky swagger. And we want someone to take him down. And only Sorkin can write this particular kind of a takedown, and Demi Moore delivers it beautifully.
Wow. I'm sexually aroused, Commander.
Now, this is not something you say to your superior officer in a reaction to getting dressed down. And Steve said earlier in this episode how he didn't like the way Galloway is treated throughout this movie, and I imagine this is one of those moments.
It's so funny. The pre-Me Too, this is a very classic kind of joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this joke flies that well. I think, the idea of saying this to your superior officer after she dressed you down is not cool.
I think it not only demonstrates his lack of respect for Galloway, it demonstrates his lack of respect for the Navy at this point. That he,
True.
superior officer, should you say that? Absolutely not. Should you say that to someone who you are a superior officer to? Still no. This is not the type of thing that you should say in a professional environment. I mean,
that's a fair point.
Could you say this to your friend? Maybe, but definitely not when you're on the clock.
I mean, guys, right now, I just want to let both of you know.
Oh, no.
I'm going to cut that out, by the way. That's not good.
Right. I thought that was used to leave all of that in. I liked it. But yeah, you're right. I should have done the more macro approach to this and said, this is not, correct in any format, but certainly in this format, specifically because of their relationship and how it's been stressed that she is his commanding officer. And Jessup's even going to say that later on when they go to Cuba, in a pretty unsettling commentary. Yeah. But
it takes you a whole other place.
Exactly. But but I also think this is Kaffee's way out of the situation. Whenever there's tension, he makes a joke. Whenever there's a confrontation, he makes a joke. Kaffee's not the kind of guy to get into confrontations, which is why I think Jessup thinks he can run over him in the court. He senses that Kaffee is not, throughout the whole movie, he senses that Kaffee is not up to snuff because Kaffee doesn't like confrontation. That's why he's great at negotiating plea deals, because to him, it's all play to get to the final number and then we're done with it. He actually doesn't like to go toe-to-toe. He's not built to do that. And so I think it's a fascinating thing to see him default to these kinds of things. But I also think, as you said, Steve, I think any environment this is not correct, but and this was played for jokes back then, but I think Rob Reiner was forward-thinking, and possibly Aaron Sorkin in the writing, because in the past, when we've seen this stuff in the 80s and 70s, whatever, there's a giggle or a laugh that follows, Galloway gives him nothing and deals with, because she is a woman who has dealt with this kind of shit in the military her whole life. She steps right past it and moves on to fighting for Downey and Dawson, saying they haven't murdered anyone because there was no intent. She does not play to his sexual arousing comment at all.
The doctor's report says that Santiago died of asphyxiation brought on by acute lactic acidosis, and that the nature of the acidosis strongly suggests poisoning. Now, I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty bad.
He thinks he's got him.
Santiago died at 1 a.m. At 3, the doctor wasn't able to determine the cause of death. 2 hours later, he said it was poison.
Oh, now I see what you're saying. It had to be Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick.
So we've got this battle of wills going on between these guys in this section here. One having a certain approach to it, one having a completely different approach to it. One who believes they're innocent, and one who, well, not innocent necessarily in terms of they didn't kill somebody, but certainly innocent of the intention to kill somebody, and one who's just trying to get this thing over with.
What's interesting about the way this is constructed, and I'm sure this some of this comes out of those 8 months of Aaron Sorkin and Rob Reiner banging out this script. But what's happened because of the way it's set up is that our sympathy was pulled to Santiago because of hearing his letter and then going immediately into that scene with Jessup. And so in one sense, our sympathy is against Dawson and Downey because it's pretty clear they taped him up and they did at least some of this stuff. But because of Galloway, what we're really doing is pulling our sympathy away from Kaffee, the main character, and realizing that he has to learn a lesson. That in fact, the way that he is doing things is not right, and that Joe is right, even though Tom Cruise is the star, Right. And I think that's really good construction.
I'm going to talk to your supervisor.
Okay, go straight up Pennsylvania Avenue. It's the big white house with the pillars in front.
And he thinks he's done it. He thinks he's shut her down completely, right?
Well, has Kaffee ever lost at anything? I don't think he has. I think that I think he was the star player on the Little League baseball team. I think he was the valedictorian. He was the prom king. He had everything goes right for him, partially because he is exceptionally talented. And so he assumes that's what's going to happen next.
And I don't think he's ever dealt with anybody like Galloway. I don't think he's ever dealt with a woman like Galloway, right? And she is not putting up with any of his bullshit. She's clear about what she's doing, even when he tries to ridicule her, kind of like Jessup does to Markinson. Oh, yeah, why don't you go right on up Pennsylvania Avenue and it's the White House with the columns. She isn't playing any of it. And then just when he thinks he's won this exchange, she gets the better of him.
You know what a code red is?
And he stands there mystified because he doesn't.
What a pity.
And leaves him there.
I mean, Kaffee demonstrates a remarkable ability to compartmentalize because based off of his dialogue when Galloway first gets there, we think that he hasn't read the file. He doesn't know anything. He very quickly demonstrates, oh, I've read the thing. It's all up here. I've read every single thing. I don't know what it means per se, but but it does sound bad. And the moment that she introduces information that he is not aware of, that's what piques his interest. Like, okay, you actually know something that I don't. I now have to address this.
I think Kaffee has spent his whole life knowing on some level that he's skating on thin ice and knowing at some point he is not going to get away with it.
Right.
I think he has convinced himself most of the time that I'm awesome and that the fact that I have Sam Weinberg doing a bunch of my work, he can't do what I can do and this is all still great. But deep down, he knows there's shit he doesn't know. And I think, and this is the other, is because there's two things. One thing is like the hard work, discipline, do all the stuff, and maybe Kaffee isn't always the best at all that. And the other is the ethical question, is that I think that's the bigger thing that Kaffee has protected himself from wrestling with is actually the real questions of right and wrong, which it sounds like his father was a crusading attorney for civil rights and things like that. And Kaffee is just out there trying to win cases. And I don't think I think he knows he hasn't really faced that yet.
Yeah, and I wonder if he saw what the end result of all of that was for his dad and was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, look where it left you. Look where you ended up. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to do that. There's a better way to do it. There's a flashier way to do it. And there is a journey he's going on in this movie to kind of confront what his father did in fighting for justice for people, which Jessup kind of mocks later on in the movie in their first encounter. And as Kaffee is left with this question of what is a code red and certainly going to try to find out, I think this is a perfect time to stop part one of our discussion on A Few Good Men here on the Cine-Files.
As always, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. You can visit us on the various social medias out there, Cine-Files on our Facebook page or Cine_Files on X, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. And of course, if you want to subscribe to the show, if you haven't already, Apple Podcasts or Overcast or Spotify or YouTube or anywhere else, anywhere that you can leave a comment. We love to read them and respond to you. Anywhere that you can leave a review, they are very, very helpful to the show. Anyone who would like to support the show can do so at patreon.com/the Cine-Files, as well as Apple Podcasts, where you can get access to our Cine-Files short. We just recorded one with Shannon to talk about Wonder Man, which all three of us loved on Disney+. You can check that out right now on Patreon as well as Apple. You can also reach me at SR Morris on Twitter and SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how would folks reach you?
Always, please come find me at The Rocha Says on all social medias, but really head on over to my YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, where you get to hear me and Shannon McClung and Michael Vogel on the Geek Buddies every week, and occasionally Steve Morris popping by to do some reviews as well. So please head on over there, youtube.com/John Rocha Says, to listen and watch all the stuff I do over there.
And Shannon, how would people find you on the lovely internets?
On Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. And if you have HBO Max and are a fan of The Pit, my character is coming back. My first episode will be February 19th on HBO Max.
Shannon, we all are going to be tuned into The Pit and everything else you're doing. And I cannot wait to come back and talk about more A Few Good Men next Friday on the Cine-Files.